Oh
So how you
my
doing,
God,
man?
yeah.
You've been recording again. You've been filming, right?
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
talk about that yet? Is it too soon?
I can't talk about the specifics
Okay.
publicly.
Okay, fine.
If we talked about it publicly, like, then I'd cut it out, you know.
Sure.
So I will talk to you about it now and cut it out. Yeah.
All right, fine.
So
Yeah.
sorry guys, this bit may just be, yeah, you might experience a slight skip here, so apologies.
Well,
Um,
I mean that's I mean I'm thrilled for you, and that's super cool. I will say though, and not obviously this is not a competition, George. We're friends, but you didn't get called a pussy by Clive Barker in the Midnight Society,
no,
though, did you?
no,
No,
I did not.
no, you did
No,
not.
I did not. And
I
that
think
that
that happened to me.
I was reading it, and I was getting, it was so funny. I was getting offended on your behalf. It was so funny because the Midnight Society version of Clive Barker is a bitch,
Oh, he's great. I love him so
isn't he?
much. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
just so brilliant. I mean, he
But
is like the
he's the
the
male counterpart
grounded.
of
Yeah.
he's the male counterpart of Mary Shelley, right? He just turns up,
Yes.
says, "What's
Right.
up, fuckers?" and gets
Yeah.
a flick knife out and wants to stab people. And Barker's basically the male version of her. So yeah,
He's the one who's sitting back and he's just critically assessing everything.
yeah,
Everything everybody says, he leads them down a path and then very quietly rips them to shreds in a very
yeah,
mean way. Mostly it's Lovecraft that he does it to, because,
yeah.
you know,
Because you would.
well,
Let's be
yeah.
honest.
And it's
There's scope.
accurate as well. I mean, funnily enough, I mean, like the thing I love about the Midnight Society is they're so well researched. you
Yes.
know they
Yeah.
get something very essential. I mean, obviously it's like, it's a cartoon. You could see it as a comic,
Yeah.
or an actual like Netflix cartoon. You could see it actually working in that format. um
Yeah.
but there is a core of truth. That's
Oh
what's
yeah.
so brilliant. They get something very essential about everyone that they spoof or lampoon. um
Yeah. No, I think Bitter does an incredible job of capturing the voices of the people, dead or alive. I think they do an
Yeah, it's
amazing
really
job with it.
clever. I mean, of all things, the thing it reminds me of the most, and it is really weird. It's the League of Gentlemen. You know
Yeah.
how
Yeah, I can see
in the
that.
League of, like the guys in the League of Gentlemen, they they're observational comedians ultimately. They
Hmm.
satire real life, no matter how grotesque and bizarre they get. And every character in the League of Gentlemen, no matter how frigging weird they become, there is this core of essential truth to them. Those
Yeah.
characters, as freakish and bizarre as they get. Those characters, and that's kind of what you get with the Midnight Society. If you know horror,
Yeah.
you're like, oh, that works so well. And there's little nuances as well, like the reason Barker goes after Lovecraft all the time is
Yeah.
because Barker hates Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Barker's been very, very public, about
Yeah.
the fact that he absolutely despises Lovecraft and his work, and sees
Yeah.
it as kind of a perversion of what horror is for and what
Right.
fantastical fiction is for. He really,
Well,
really doesn't like it.
I mean, Barker and Barker's not especially, religious or even necessarily spiritual, but Barker definitely believes you know, in sex as being one of the most like
Mm,
powerful positive forces in the world. Of course, he
mm.
fucking hates
Of
Lovecraft,
course he
who
does,
is
right?
clearly
Because
horrified by his own flesh, right?
Oh, right. I think this is it. I think really is it. I mean, the funny thing is, they ostensibly utilize kind of similar ideas and kind of similar
Yeah,
imagery in many respects
yeah,
and subject matter, but they use it to emphasize the antipodean poles of horror. So
right.
Barker is eroticism. He's eros. He is the metaphysics. He's the rapture. He's the possibility. That's what he is. He's the potential of horror. Lovecraft is the exact opposite. He's Thanatos. He's the despair. He's the darkness. He's the
Yeah,
emptiness. And I think you're right. I think Lovecraft in his life was terrified of the flesh.
yeah,
I
yeah,
really do. I think he found flesh morbid.
yeah.
You know.
Whereas, Barker clearly, whatever other issues he may or may not have had in his
Mm,
life, reveled in
mm.
that. And yeah,
Oh
and
my God. Yeah.
it's so fun to see them kind of tearing strips out of each other.
Oh, isn't it? Isn't it? I mean, and the interesting thing is, like, as people, Barker's the stronger person. There's absolutely no doubt.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah,
there's just no comparison, right? Barker is the person who knows who they are. He has the stronger identity than
yeah.
Lovecraft did when he was alive.
But yeah,
That's very clear.
but I also think like what they've got in common as artists, and this is a thread that we've pulled on many times before, but it's the fact that it's the fact that they what they have in common is like a commitment to expressing the truth of what they're thinking and feeling.
Yeah.
And in Lovecraft's case, it kind of condemns him quite often as a human being.
It often does. I mean, the funny thing about Lovecraft that
it
I
still makes
find,
the work compelling. That's the important
yeah,
thing.
absolutely, it does. And the interesting thing about love, I mean, we've spoken about this before. It came up again recently because, like, the video where we spoke about it specifically kind of came up in my, the Facebook memories thing, where we spoke about like the work being wiser than the man.
Yeah.
I think that's very true of Lovecraft a lot of the time, not all the time. Sometimes the work is fucking abominable, and it really does. It is, and sometimes it does express some of the more hideous perspectives that he had.
Yeah.
What I find with Lovecraft is, like, how he's trying almost like with his language to coerce the reader into regarding the things that he describes as abominable and terrifying and disturbing and whatnot. But it's very clear whether he acknowledges it or not, and I don't think he does. I don't think he does it consciously. It's very clear that he loves this shit.
Well, he's at the very least he's endlessly fascinated by it,
right?
Because it's what he keeps coming back to.
It's what he keeps coming back to, and the verve with which he describes it, like the incredible like delight that he takes in telling you what the great old ones look like, and the details of their anatomy and their culture and all. And it's like, you love this shit. I don't even think you know. I don't even think you realize that you love this. And if you just went one step further, you would have been the Barker of your age,
Yeah.
If he could have just broken out of those slightly neurotic ideas that he had about like the way humanity was supposed to be and the way the world was supposed to be. I think he could have potentially seen the worth in his own work, in his own vision, how far he could have taken that. Because sometimes he is visionary in a way that nobody writing at the time is. He conceives of ideas and explores things that are, wow.
Well, there's a reason we're still reading him now, 100 years later. And it's not, it's not just because he's one of the old dead white dudes you have to read. I mean, the reason that people are still going to the work and finding value in it is because there's value to be found. There's value, there's quality in there, alongside, a bunch of attitudes that are, I mean, they were outdated when he was expressing them, let alone now.
Oh yeah, he was taken to task by his contemporaries a lot of the time before his outdated ideas and that eccentric notion like that he had that was almost like pre-Victorian of what things were supposed to be like.
But though, I mean, I think about this a lot. Someone who, I mean, I think if you live in 2025 and you still consider yourself, at least in a qualified way, a fan of the artist Eminem, you have to reckon with this, right? There's a thing for me about like, what would they be like without their flaws? And it's very hard to picture because the flaws are so integral to who they are as artists. You know what I mean? Like all of the things that make Eminem, in my view, a brilliant MC, perhaps one of the most naturally gifted MCs of all time, are also the things that make him desperately petty and perpetually unhappy and often deeply unpleasant. Like they're all connected. And
this is absolutely it.
A happy, well-adjusted Eminem would not be the phenomenon that he is and would not have produced the body of work he produced because he wouldn't have had that drive from, you know what I mean? And also, like, he's also someone who knows he's self-aware enough to know he's a product of his childhood and he's a product of a very particular kind of very broken upbringing and blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of his, he sings about his biography, it's in his work, but it is interesting to me. I do think of it because there are many times as a fan when you listen to Eminem and you go like, why are you like this? Why did you do that again? Why? And it's like, just because he can't help himself. That's just his baked in.
Who he is, right?
And I feel like Lovecraft, it's the same thing. It's like it's really, I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I obviously wish for everyone to know themselves better and be happier in their own skin. I think that's just a good thing for people, like blanket statement. That's a good thing for people. But I can't help but feel like part of Lovecraft's intense discomfort at himself is part of the fuel for what makes his work so great.
I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right. Would he have even sat down and put pen to paper were it not for this intense discomfort? Would he would he have been able to trawl the depths of horror as he does without that sense of being an alien in the world, that sense of impending inevitability, the horror at creation? I don't know. I don't think
And
he
also,
would. I mean, it's inextricable, isn't it?
I think so. And also, I mean, I do think one of the things that Lovecraft is genuinely brilliant at when he turns his mind to it is the kind of the horror of, I mean, you know, his work is branded as cosmic horror, obviously, but like the horror of the cosmos, by which I mean the horror of the fact that we are surrounded by an almost, I mean, for our own mental internal purposes, an infinite void.
Yes.
That has no heat, no light, no weight, no air. That is
totally inimical to us, right?
Absolutely. That is antithetical to anything that we represent. You know, that is life.
Yes.
That is
inimical
that is,
and profoundly
intensely
uninterested.
Yeah, I was going to say hostile,
yeah.
but actually, you're right. Just uninterested, but uninterested to the point of it will kill us if we try and exist in it. I mean, it's just, you know, and there's this tiny, tiny bubble of light.
Right, without intention, without even acknowledgement, it will just kill us. And that is even true of this tiny bubble, right? I mean, what people don't seem to understand is we can only exist on like a really tiny percentage of the Earth.
Yeah.
For like a really tiny
percentage of time as well. I mean, it's all incredibly finite. And
being conscious, that's the horror of Lovecraft. I mean, that's the funny thing about Lovecraft. It is, for all of its grand metaphysical ideas, its great old ones, its interdimensional monstrosity, magics, occultism, there is this really weird rationality grounded in Lovecraft. Almost everything he talks about has a grounding in rationality, even when he is dealing with things like occultism and magic and whatnot. In his purview, occultism and magic, they either derive from another universe or reality where the laws are different, which is why they break the laws of our own reality, or they are simply another like form of science. Often when he's talking about occultism and magic, he's actually engaging in metaphor, because his great fear was what science would uncover. You know, it's that dabbling in the profane or in stuff that man is not meant to wot of. You know, we will go too far in Lovecraft's purview, and we already have, of course. I mean, that's the other thing, right? We already have, because we've split the atom, and you know, that's also a thing that looms large.
But also, if you think about that fear of the void, that fear of like the universe as this cold, empty space, well, that's entirely informed by a scientific understanding.
Of course.
We were ignorant of that for most of our existence as a species. Science brought us that knowledge. Prometheus-like, it brought us that. And then just said, okay, so sit with that. In the same way that it brought us, you know, a lot of the tools to dismantle many of the truth claims of many organized religions, not all of them, but many of them, and force us to confront the uncomfortable implications of those things, you know. For those of us who decided to do that, of course, which not everyone did. But I think
that, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what he's getting at. It's that existential void that's left in the death of ideology, like tradition. Ultimately, that's kind of what he's getting at. It's the fact that there is that even if it's a delusion, even if it's not true,
and the irony of it is, I mean, when you get a writer like Fleming, for example, right? It's clear that Fleming is deeply, deeply in love with his particular idea of what it means to be English and British, and what Britain represents to him and represents to him as a force in the world. And because he's a very honest writer, it's very clear to a reader in the modern era that a lot of his views are completely repugnant. But nonetheless, there are moments when you read, especially when you're reading from Bond's perspective, and Bond is almost acting as a proxy for Fleming and his desires. It's like there is this genuine, I mean, I think it's pathological, but love. There is a kind of obsession or whatever with Britishness, with the British Empire, with the notion of various kind of fairly, you know, a lot of concepts that don't stand up to a great deal of scrutiny, to put it mildly. But
the myths, right?
But the myths,
nationalistic myths of empire.
Absolutely, which you can feel that he's clearly internalized. And I think what I love about Lovecraft is I never get that sense from him. I never get a sense that he loves the way things are. Even he's just so scared of where they're going.
This
You know
is
what I mean?
it,
Like,
and
yeah,
he's just terrified of being. I think that's
yeah,
ultimately it's something people often miss. They
yeah.
do look at things like his racism and
Sure.
his very controversial views on what he considers to be misogyny and all that
Yeah,
kind of
which
thing,
are not to
which
be
are
ignored.
repugnant. They're
They
absolutely
are
repugnant.
repugnant.
They are,
Yeah,
but they are microcosms of the greater fear. They're actually
right.
expressions of his greater fear. And the greater fear of Lovecraft is, interestingly, something that most horror deals with in one way or another. And that is the fact that we are these almost arbitrary scraps of sentience rattling around in rotting meat
Mm,
that's going to
mm,
fail us eventually. And the fact that our delusions of identity are that. They are delusions. You know, they're the things that we value most. And as science is increasingly demonstrating to us, the things that we value in ourselves are often not concrete. They're not real.
yeah,
Now Lovecraft uses that as an excuse for kind of existential despair, and I don't
yeah.
buy that personally. I don't buy that. People who read my Facebook or Blue Sky and look at my comments on politics and whatnot might be forgiven for thinking otherwise. They might be forgiven for
Sure.
thinking that I've become a cynic, and that's not true. I'm just cynical with regards to traditional systems
I
and
don't. I,
politics and
I
whatnot.
genuinely don't think. I don't think you are cynical about politics at all. I really don't. I think what you are is very clear-eyed about the moment that we're finding ourselves in,
Yeah,
and I think
absolutely. Yeah.
it's easy to misread that as cynicism if you don't understand the historical moment. But if you do,
Yes.
because I mean, I've been saying this for a while now. I think we're in a far too deep a hole for cynicism to be of any conceivable use to us at this point.
Right. Yeah.
What we need is clear-eyed analysis
Hmm.
and very and thoughtful planning and courageous action. That's what we
And
need.
married to that passion. That's
Well,
the
that's
other
yeah,
thing. That's
absolutely,
the
yeah.
other thing which I think we often lack. Something that or rather, we apologize for too much in our
That I agree
political
with.
spheres.
That I agree with.
We
Yeah.
apologize for it too much. Again, it came up in not the same log not too long ago. We did. Are you familiar with Bender's Fen?
No.
No, oh my God! Seriously, Kit, if you get, it's hard to find these days. There is a BFI Blu-ray of it. It's just quite expensive, but
Okay.
if you can find it, watch it. It's
All right.
a play for today from 1974, I believe, and it is. I watched it for the first time to do the Not the Same Log recording, and by the end of it, I was up out of my chair, pacing around my little place, talking to myself because I could not believe what I'd just seen. It is incendiary. It's
Mm,
absolutely incendiary. This was beamed into the living rooms of the UK at
mm,
prime time in 1974, and it's about a young man who is the son of a parson and his wife, who has, for reasons, funnily enough, it has a lot of overlap with what we're going to be discussing in a bit.
mm,
He is very young and he's very intelligent, he's very smart, but he has latched onto these bullshit nationalistic myths of what the UK is or what he thinks it should be. And it's married to this very peculiar racism, this almost fundamentalist view of Christianity. And funnily enough, his
mm.
parents aren't like that. Despite the fact that his father is a parson, his parents aren't like that. But he's also going through this incredible crisis of identity. The film makes it very clear that he is nascently homosexual. He has fantasies about the guy who delivers the milk to the
Right,
to the
right.
house. And he encounters, as he's wandering around the fens of like Middle England, spirits, creatures, entities like out of Blake, demons and angels, which are removed from any particular mythology, but which are inherently British. And it's about how his preconceptions of identity become totally deconstructed as the film goes on. And it's a painful thing, but it's a good thing.
Mm,
Everything he asserts to believe is revealed as being a kind of defense mechanism because he knows in his heart that he is a misfit, that he is an outcast, and that
yeah.
it's going to be difficult for him. It's not expressed, but it's sublimated. And what the film does is it provides this idea, this notion of almost nationalism in a very peculiar way, which is entirely left wing and which is in accordance with actual British history, but which celebrates the deviance and the transgression and the tradition of poetry. It's Blake, it's the Romantics, you know, it's homosexuality, it's all of this wonderful stuff, which this film says, you know what? We who are of the left, who are sort of socialist and rebellious and who are against the prescribed narratives, we need to get it through our fucking skulls. We need to take this away from them. We often cede that territory to our enemies on the right who make bullshit myths out of it, and we just abandon it. We just let them have it instead of saying, you know what?
Yeah.
No, we have a nationalism too. We have Britain, a UK, and it's ours. It's not fucking yours, and ours is real.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Well, because
ours is real.
Ours is rooted not in mythology, but in the actual people that actually live here. All of us, in all of our multitude. Yeah.
Yes. The history of multiculturalism,
exactly.
and also ours acknowledges the darkness, ours acknowledges the shame and the abuse and the hideousness of that history.
You know,
I tell you, you must watch it. I couldn't believe it. I was like, how did this not cause draw? How did the scenes where there are scenes where he has almost like pseudo-erotic dreams about the guy who delivers the milk, and it's married to these weird images of demons and like Blakean angels and what, and I'm like, what the fuck? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then I went away after and I watched some documentaries about it, and the guy who made it said, you know how we did it? We were at Pebble Mill at the time. We were apart from centralized authority. And they kind of let us do what we liked. They didn't care.
Right.
As long as we didn't go over budget, they didn't give a shit, you know. So we got away with it. There wasn't as much purview over things as there is now. There wasn't as much centralized control. There wasn't as much concentration of ideology and agenda as there is now in the BBC.
And it's interesting, isn't it? Because when you think about the subject of our conversation tonight, one of the many interesting things that's come out of it is I think it feels like the kind of thing that the BBC used to do.
Yeah.
It feels like the kind of brave project. And if the BBC had done this, if they had made this show, it would have been cheaper. And there would have been things about it that perhaps would have been a little clunkier in terms of the production, because this is a very, very, very well produced piece of work. But
isn't it just?
But they could have done it, or a version of it. And it's very interesting that here in 2025, this show ends up on, of all fucking platforms, Netflix,
right? And you know for a fact that they may have even pitched. In fact, I have no doubt they pitched this to the BBC at some point. There is no doubt in my mind, and there are projects like it going through the BBC all the fucking time, where there are board meetings about them, and some awful person or persons are saying, "Oh well, that may not play well with." This particular demographic, it may not play well with the fucking right wing who we don't want to offend at the moment. People who hate the BBC anyway, by the way.
You know what? And it's an interesting thought, that, isn't it? It's an interesting point because, of course, since it's come out, there has been entirely predictable. Well, I say entirely predictable. There has been a right-wing backlash, of course, that was predictable. I was unpleasantly surprised by how mainstream that was. I was unpleasantly surprised by the fact that, for example, the actual leader of the Conservative Party was apparently prepared to go on the news and slag the programme off whilst admitting they hadn't seen it, and also telling rather blatant lies about the source material as well. Rather blatant racist lies about the source material, to be precise. And that is quite extraordinary. Boris Johnson writing a full-page spread in whatever rag it is he writes for this week, saying it's well-made tosh, but using 1,000 words to do it.
Honestly, I have such little time at this point. If you are listening to or reading those screeds and taking them seriously, given who they're coming from, then more for you,
Sure, I hear that.
More for you,
But I think the point I'm making is that I would have absolutely expected it from the Farage reform types, obviously they were going to get all upset about the notion that there might be anything wrong at all with masculinity in 2025, or with the British construct of masculinity. Of course they would be upset, but it is if you really want a canary in the coal mine kind of, or an alarm bell for how bad the far right specific mental disease has spread, I think you can look no further than the fact that not merely the marginal Farage types, but the actual leader of the Conservative Party was making up racist lies about this show.
Well, they've got nowhere else to go
whilst not
now.
having seen it.
That's the ultimate thing. They've got nowhere else to go but further and further right now. They sold themselves long ago to that disease.
Well, and I mean, yes, I think also they're being enabled by a centre-right Labour Party that is refusing to engage with the framing of any debate at any point. They're still allowing the Daily Mail to frame every single political argument in the country how they want.
And just totally lacks conviction. I mean, for me, it's not the Conservatives that worry me now, because I lump them all together. They are the far right. They're all one block, and they are evil. I'm not interested in them or their input anymore. And I think anyone who is an imbecile. I think that particularly if you are like a working class person and you are giving any credence, or if you are taking what any of them say with any sincerity, you are being self-mutilating at this point. They are all insincere fucks, and they need to be discarded, quite frankly. What's going to destroy us is ultimately this very further and further right of centre Labour Party, which is swinging the gates open for them.
Yeah.
Apps every time, every conversation, middling and muddling about, no conviction whatsoever. No, I mean, I can't believe I'm saying this, but Kimi Badenoch said today, I believe, that Keir Starmer doesn't know what he believes. And you know what? Much as I hate her guts, he is absolutely
She's right about that. Yeah, she is right about that.
And even if she's not right, that's what it appears as.
No,
that's
she's
the
right.
way he acts.
She's right. He doesn't stand for anything except the perpetuation of himself, and
he doesn't stand for a goddamn thing.
Nope,
and people are not morons. Not they can see that. Yeah. They can see that, and through that, he and his are swinging the gate wide for Trumpian style fascism. They are swinging it wide, unless we can counter it with an alternative that is, this is what we need. We need conviction. We need passion. We need someone who is willing not to play the politics. Someone who's willing to talk like a normal fucking person, who's not going to sit there on discussion shows just because they want to be invited on again and just, oh, well, yes, I hear what you're saying. No, fuck off. When they're racist, call them racist. When they're fucking lying, say, you're fucking lying. You are a fucking liar, and here's how I'm going to show you're a fucking liar. I'm not even going to talk to you anymore. I'm going to talk to the camera. I'm going to talk to the people out there. This piece of shit is lying to me, lying to you. They think you are morons. They think you are self-policing morons. That's what they see you as. And that's what we need. That's what we need. But no, it seems like no one who is speaking, like people who are considered, I mean, it's amazing that anyone considers Keir Starmer to be of the left at all. I mean, if you think that, then again, there's something wrong with you. You need to really reevaluate the way you operate politically. But the way people who are publicly considered to be of the left because of the hideous fucking propaganda and conditioning that we've had in this country over the last couple of decades, they operate in such a milquetoast, flabby, weather vane way. It's clear that they have no conviction, and that's what the average person is preconceiving as being left-wing politics. Because anyone with a genuine left-wing voice is being shut out. We saw what happens.
Yeah,
we've seen what happens.
But the other thing about it is that I find ridiculous is they do that. So everyone in the centre and centre right and centre left all close ranks and pull together as well. We can't have that again. And then the right wing press just accuses them of being exactly the same anyway. Yeah. They just tell more lies.
This is the other thing.
And they're always going to be on the back foot. They're always going to be apologising.
People like Keir Starmer and whoever's behind him, like all the group think tank that he listens to, they seem to be of the delusion that if they can somehow pacify their enemies, that they can say or do something, there's some magic code where if
No,
they just get it right.
I'm sorry. I think it's far, far, far worse than that. I don't think they know who their enemies are.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
I
Yes.
think I think they see their enemies as quote unquote extremism, but what they mean by that is overwhelmingly what they mean by that is the left, even though there
The
is no
left.
extremist left, and there hasn't been an extremist left in this country for 70 years, maybe.
Yeah, you're right.
Like there is no extremist left. There's globally there really isn't any
Hmm.
extremist left. There hasn't been for a very long time. But you wouldn't know that reading the right wing press. They are convinced that it's the second coming of the Bolsheviks.
Yeah.
And they'll just make it up. They'll just lie.
Yeah.
They'll just
Just
lie
lie
about
through their
people.
teeth.
They'll
Yeah.
lie about what people are doing, and we end up in this situation where, because the Labour Party refused to, and I increasingly I did come down to it is about the framing, and this is the thing. It's like now I detested Blair, and I detested a lot of what he did. But Blair understood this in a way that the current mob doesn't. Blair understood that you have to set the agenda and you have to set the framing. Now, unfortunately, he mainly used his powers for evil, but he was very, very good at that. He was very good at, and he managed to. I mean, he discombobulated the right-wing press machine. Now, he was right-wing enough themselves that they kind of choked it down and swallowed it and said, "Okay, because we want to." But like, he had a real talent for reframing the argument in a way that and forcing the other side to use his slogans, fight on his ideological ground. It's what you have to do. It's what you have to. If you're explaining, you're losing. If you're using their language, you are losing.
This is it. If you're operating within the parameters they prescribe,
exactly.
you are always going to lose.
You're always going to lose.
Always.
And
a lot of
the framing.
Yes, and I mean, this show is a really good example of that, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's not interested in mollifying anyone.
No.
It's so brilliant. It has one of the things that really profoundly got to me while watching it, and I haven't seen something like this come out of British television for a very long time.
Yeah.
By the way, it's its sincerity.
Yeah.
It
absolutely.
has project. It has an agenda. It has a politics. It has an ideology, and it wants sincerely to explore it, not in the way that the right is framing it, as though it's some assault. It's not. It perceives, the people who've created this perceive problems in our culture. They can see them very clearly, and they can see the way they operate, and they are putting it up on the screen. This is the reason why it's framed in the way it's framed. One of the problems, it's not a problem innate to the text in any way. This is me. The first time I watched it, I kind of missed bits of it because I was in awe at the technicals.
Right. Yeah.
I was lost. I was watching what was going on a technical level.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is
How
amazing.
did they just do that? Yeah. No, absolutely. And there is a lot of that, especially in the first episode. Because, I mean, everyone talks about the second episode with the school, and that is very impressive technically. But actually, for me, it is the first one, because it's the raid. It's the police armed raid on the house, and the way that it is all done in one shot. And then you follow the kid into the car. And that's a long journey where he's driving at the police station. I mean, it's a 5-minute drive, but it feels long. Because when's the last time you ever saw a TV show that didn't just cut to the arrival at that point?
Of course, right.
Like,
I mean,
we're so used to a particular kind of filmic literacy at this point that just the act of being sat in a car with a camera pointing at a kid and a detective for like 5 minutes feels subversive,
subversive and transgressive,
strange.
and and of course, I mean, the most brilliant thing about it, of course, this is not arbitrary. They didn't do this as a sort of technical show off or anything like that. They did this because it feeds into the themes. They wanted a rawness. They wanted as almost documentary reality. They wanted this to be real life.
Yeah, that's exactly
as real as it could possibly be. And of course, when you're filming this way, it does force a certain rawness. There are things that always happen in performance, in just the way things are framed, that don't happen when it's meticulously shot and reshot and edited and so on and so forth. It creates a certain energy, and that energy it seeds off of the screen in this. I mean, it's part of the reason why the right wing don't like it. I mean, they don't like it. It doesn't even matter if it were totally, if the ideology, if the agenda of this film had nothing to do with right wing, left wing politics or whatever, they would still have hated it because it's sincere. And sincerity is like salt to the slug for the conservative. It absolutely is. Truthfulness is just evil to them. They would have hated it anyway. The fact that it's getting at something, it's getting at a part of their ideology, that it's attacking something that they hold very dear and that they would subscribe, that is the most, that's why it's so vicious. That's why the backlash is so vicious. You know, if I were part of this, I'd be like, fucking good. It's upset you've
pissed off exactly the right people. And also in the way that they have engaged with it as well. I mean, that's the other thing, is in the way that they have articulated their criticisms, they have revealed themselves.
Of course, and that's to anyone who's watched it.
Exactly.
The ones who haven't even watched it, and it's like you are just. I mean, when we call you reactionary, this is it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. This is it. You haven't watched the damn material.
There is that, but also consider the incredible racist lie that has been perpetuated. Mm-hmm. I mean, it must have come out of the far right sphere. It must have come out of, you know, the kind of Prison Planet type scumbags, but it's now being regurgitated by mainstream politicians who absolutely, if they don't know better, they should, but they do
know better.
Which is to say that this is based on a true story, which it is not. The creators have been emphatic about that. Stephen Graham was inspired by some true events, and we'll get back to that because it is worth talking about. But it is not based on any one case that has happened. No. And they have lied about that, and they have additionally lied in the very telling way of saying that they have made the completely false claim that the race of the child has been changed. Right. The race of the male perpetrator has been changed. And that is, again, completely untrue.
Yes, you are. I mean, I will say it now to anyone who is of that ilk, who believes that, they're fucking lying to you. Yeah. And if you keep telling yourself that, you are lying to yourself and you're lying to other people.
And you are the equivalent of the guy in season 4 who goes up to Stephen Graham's character and says, yeah, I'm right behind your son. We all know they faked the footage. That's who you are.
Yeah.
You are that guy.
Yeah.
And you probably are a guy.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. You probably are. Yes. I mean, I mean, I know it's a waste of time talking to them. I've got to that point now, by the way. I don't know whether you have as well, where I do not talk to them.
I mean,
because it's a waste of time.
It's interesting how basically just by organics and osmosis, and over the last few years, my opportunities to interact with people like that have become so limited that it's not really. It's just kind of happened, really. That I've got myself to a space.
It's more of a natural thing,
Yeah, I just don't have
occasionally
to.
I come across them, and it's just like, I mean, my tolerance is now gone.
Oh, yeah.
My courtesy is now gone. Insofar as I'm concerned, they are fascists, and there's only one good thing to do with fascists. You know, I'm not interested in them at all. I'm not interested in anything they've got to say. I'm not interested, because for me, they are universally insincere. They are universally, they don't understand conversation in the same way they don't understand art. They see these things in terms of agenda
and
of dominion. Everything is propaganda. Everything is propaganda, It does. I mean, of course, all art has a message. In a weird kind of way, they're kind of right, but not in the way they think. You know, all art does have a message. All art does have open space for conversation. That's what great art does, and that's what this does.
The lie that they perpetuate, though, or seek to perpetuate, is the notion that there is such a thing as political neutrality. This is
what they're doing. What they're doing is they're doing what they always do. They are projecting their insincerity onto this. Because again, the truthfulness of this is like the sunlight to Nosferatu. It is burning their skin. They can't stand it. They cannot stand the luminous effervescence of this. And the fact that it had started the conversation, they fucking hate that. The fact that it has actually caused they hate it.
So I don't, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think I mean, I agree that they hate it. I think the only way I'd nuance a little bit what you said there is to say that I think there have been many attempts over the last 3 or 4 years to have conversations about this.
Mhm.
There have been attempts in the liberal media, certainly, to try and talk about Andrew Tate, to try and talk
Yeah.
about the rise of the incel movement. There have
The
been articles, there have been journals,
manosphere,
the
etc.
manosphere. What this has done, though, what this show has done is, in a brilliant way, it has mainstreamed the conversation,
It has.
and
It
it has
has.
and it has given the conversation a concrete handle to hang off,
Yes.
which it didn't have before.
The other
And
thing
that,
it's done, which
it's like a fulcrum point,
yes, you're
and
right.
that
And
is
the other thing
really
it's done,
powerful.
which is it's actually incendiary. It's very quiet in the show. It's actually like everything in the show. It's actually quite subtle, but it's very profoundly there. The other thing the show does is that it says, by the way, this is not new. This
Oh
is
yeah,
not
no,
some new
absolutely,
emergence of masculinity. This is not some new phenomena. It's manifesting in a different way.
yeah,
But this is something we all suffer from. It is tackling patriarchy on
yeah,
its historical
that's right.
basis, you know? And
This
it
is
is saying,
yeah,
it's say, I mean, and this is another reason why people are fucking angry, by the way. It's saying, it's pointing the finger squarely at parents and saying, people
yeah,
who have children, and it's just saying, you know what, we fail them.
yeah,
Universally, we fail them. We fail all of them. We particularly, you know, and this is the other thing, particularly men. And this is true. I work in social care, you know, and we
yeah,
have to study these things. I can tell you, I could drag up some statistics on the amount of men who leave their families when they know they're going to have a child with learning difficulties,
sure,
or when they find out that they do, you
yeah,
know, or
yeah.
who are abusive when that happens. It's staggering.
Well, yeah, I mean, not to derail, but there was another amazing show called Toxic Town, which was a limited series with Jodie Whittaker amongst others in it, which was about the scandal in, oh my god, I'm blanking on the name of the town, Corby, I think,
Mhm.
where they had the council were cutting corners on health and safety with the transportation of polluted water, which led to a bunch of children being born with birth defects.
Right.
And there is a scene in that which I believe is based on, I mean, it was based on a true story, where one of the women's I don't know if he's her husband or long-term living boyfriend, but walks out when he discovers the child is deformed.
That
Just
is, it's so true.
can't deal with
It's
it.
so true to
Yep,
life. I mean, it's
yep.
because the thing is, again, this is all interlinked. This is all part of it. There is this culture and this history of
Mm.
what what we would call toxic masculinity or patriarchy, where everything for the male is about the ego. You know,
But
very
I mean,
often, like men are enjoined to have children as a kind of it's a kind of expression of who you are as a man, right? It's your virility,
mm,
it's your genetics that are passing on, especially if you have a son or whatever,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And when that son or child doesn't turn out the way that your ego demands or that your prescriptions demand, then somehow it's a slight against you, right? It's a slight
yeah,
against you.
yeah.
And it's like it's oh my god, the narcissism, the ego, that's what this show is dealing with. This is what adolescence is dealing with. You
So
know?
I mean, there is that. I would say that it part of the genius of the show is how much it humanizes that, though.
Yes, I
And I
mean
think
this is
to
the
its benefit and
yes.
to our benefit, because I
It
think,
does not. It does not villainize. In
well,
fact, any of the male
it doesn't
characters.
judge anyone.
No, it doesn't. It
Not even the
really.
boy is judged in
No,
this, I don't think.
Jamie. Fucking hell.
I mean, what a
I mean,
performance, by the way.
let's
This
just stop
kid.
just for a minute,
Jesus
because he's
Christ,
the
this
one that
kid.
derailed it for me. You know, he's the one where
Yeah,
I had to stop and go back because I was like, this kid's insane.
yeah,
He's brilliant.
yeah.
He's he is. It's one of the most engaging, amazing performances I've ever seen. I've never seen sincerity. I've very rarely seen sincerity like that,
I
and
tell
from
you
an
what,
actor so young.
yeah. I spent the entire first episode convinced either that he hadn't done it or that he really might not have. And part of that is because I've been conditioned by this kind of television to expect
Yeah,
twists, right?
of course.
And this does have twists, but they're not
Yes.
that kind of twists. The twists
No,
are just the emotional twist of the knife as you realize, no, this is
that's
what they're
it.
saying it is. Those are the
Yeah,
twists. The twists are there is
that's
no
it.
twist.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that, obviously, going in watching the first episode. And he is so convincing. He is so convincing in those opening scenes and those first scenes in that first hour
And
that
oh my
I was
God.
almost, even when I saw the footage, I was almost like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah.
I didn't want to believe it. And I still
Yeah.
didn't. Even when we got to episode 3, which is my favorite of the 4, I think is
My
the
favorite
actual,
too.
I mean, that is
I loved
just,
that.
I don't think
He,
I've ever seen a single hour of television as good as that in my
no,
entire life.
right.
Um,
He's he he expresses
yeah.
such sincere teenage
Oh, he's
emotion,
brilliant.
the
He's brilliant.
confusions of identity, the
Yep.
way your moods swing from one place to the next all the time, and that informs the way you are. It informs the way you act. One moment he's incredibly sympathetic, and you want to hug him. And
Yeah.
then the next he's a monster.
Yeah.
Um,
But crucially as well, what that episode does finally, the third episode of the show does, is it reveals that molten core of self-loathing
yeah,
that is
yeah,
absolutely the motivating force behind everything he does.
yeah, and that's
And
what
it's
I mean. She
it's
gets
so
it as
good.
well, doesn't she? The counselor
Yeah.
understands this, and at the end, when she does cry, it's not okay. It is also it's a release of emotion because she's so controlled throughout.
Yeah.
But it's also she sees that this boy is ruined. This boy has been destroyed.
Oh yeah. No,
You
absolutely.
know?
There is genuine sympathy for the boy in that moment because it's like, because two lives have been destroyed. There's
Yeah.
the
Well,
child that he has killed that will
yes.
never be coming back, and there is him, and
Yeah.
they are both destroyed now.
Yeah. I mean, he's gotten and what really? I mean, you see the child come out.
Oh, it's
Because
so
he's
good.
trying, he's still denying that he did it, even though it's
Yeah.
just there. It's on screen. He's seen it. It's on screen. There's no denying that he did it. And he's trying. He still seems to be thinking that at some point he might go home, or it might all
Yeah.
blow away, or it might. And it's powerful. I mean, it's
Yeah.
really powerful, like breath-stealingly powerful.
No, it's extraordinary, and it's that actress who is also that actor, sorry, who was also in A Thousand Blows with Stephen
Mhm.
Graham, which is the kind of, it's not really a Peaky Blinders sequel, but it's a Peaky Blinders type show set in Victorian
Yeah.
England, which it's a great show. It's much more kind of, I would say, straightforward entertainment than this. It's not trying to do
Yeah.
the same sort of things that this is doing. She's great in that, completely different, but she's only in this one episode, right?
Yeah.
It's Erin Doherty, and she is extraordinary because it's
I mean,
almost a two-hander. This, isn't it? This episode.
It's so
You've got
real.
this security guard, but that's about
Yes.
it. It's the meat of it is these two. I tell you what, as well, it reminded me of. I rewatched it today. As a teenager, I was a huge fan of the TV show Cracker.
Oh right,
It's
yeah.
like a massive fan of that show, and I learned some of those monologues, some of the Fitz monologues. That's how obsessed I got with that show at one point. And I realised that this episode is like, it's like the nearest that you could get to like a real life. This is what actual Cracker thing looks like. This is what it really. It's not this macho bullshit. Smoke too much, drink too much, kick the door down. Kick the emotional doors down. No. This is how you get it. This is like, she's been there 6 times.
Yeah.
She's willing to go back another 6 if she has to.
Yeah.
She's patient. She's careful.
Yeah.
I mean, oh my God.
And his reactions are so real.
Yeah.
I've been in meetings like that with some of my service users. And sometimes in the worst occasions I have been in police scenarios with them.
Sure.
And those reactions, I'm like, oh my God, I've seen that.
I mean,
I've seen that. I've seen it.
Yeah.
That moment when everything kicks off, when it just doesn't, when what you're trying to do doesn't, either it works or it doesn't, depending on what you're trying to evoke. When the emotion boils over, when you've got the tangle of confusions coming up, when someone just can't believe where they are. And what they've come to, and just is so tired, so strung out, and just wants to go home, wants things to be normal again, but knows that they won't.
And that's why the kid is so convincing in all of it, especially in that first episode, is because on some fundamental level, he doesn't quite believe it. He can't quite believe what he's done.
No. And the thing is, it's because it's not even like not real, is it? It's not sincere. That's not who he is or could have been. right?
Right.
This is something that the show is really getting at, right? He is poisoned. There's something really toxic swirling around in his soul, and it's come from outside. It's come from culture. And the show is so clever at demonstrating, by the way, this is not one thing. This is not just the influence of people like Andrew Tate and the online manosphere or whatnot. That's an element of it, but that's not everything. It's these underfunded, understaffed school environments where everything is tribalism, where everything is chaos, and where you are, your identity is tied up in aesthetics and who you are as a man and fucking nonsense like that. It's also, and this broke my heart.
Yeah.
It's Stephen Graham, right? It's the dad.
No, 100%.
The show humanizes him so beautifully. It makes him so. He reminded me of my dad, and I think he's going to remind people of everyone's dad ultimately, because that's the point, right?
Yeah,
that's
100%.
the point.
Yeah.
But it shows you how insufficient his input has been. When Jamie is questioned about it, the only specific he can come up with is he's seen his dad angry. He's seen his dad lose his temper. That's the only emotion he's been allowed to model, right?
Yeah.
Frustration and anger.
Well, he he specifically talks about seeing his father tear down a garden shed out of sheer rage at one point.
And that's
but he never hit me, and he never hit Mum.
No.
Yeah.
But that's the only thing he's seen. That's the only thing he can model. It's the only thing he can come up with in that moment.
Well, that and the disappointment of his father when his father takes him to the football and he can't play well.
God.
And that is so heartbreaking, because what's amazing is you revisit that in episode 4 and you see it from Graham's perspective, from Eddie's perspective, his father, and his father is just as mortified about that as the son
he's mortified. He's mortified about the fact that he was inadequate as a father.
He's mortified about himself. But what I love is that, and this is to tease out something you said earlier, but now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of it. You can see how clearly this is what the show is doing. It is saying, like, these are not just faults with individuals. These individuals are absolutely hobbled by the expectations around them. Eddie Miller, Graham's character, is a victim of patriarchy.
Yes,
he is absolutely a victim of patriarchy, and he has perpetuated enough of that damage onto his son that, combined with the social situations with the schools, and we haven't talked about this yet either, but the other thing that this show does magnificently, I mean, if it has done nothing else, it has educated my generation, let alone anyone older, about where social media is at. I learned some shit on this show I didn't know, and I thought I was reasonably on top of this sort of stuff. I was not. I did not understand how some of this communication is working these days. I didn't have a clue about any of that. So, these are all elements, and they are all important. Every single one of these elements is important. Every single one of these elements matters. Every single one of the elements combines to create this. I mean, no wonder the right hate this. There's no simple messaging here. There's no obvious supervillains here. There's no there's no one you can punch in the face to make this right.
No, there's no grand mythological evil here.
No.
It doesn't work like that.
No.
It doesn't. The evil is history. The evil here is history. The poison is history. And it's the myths of history.
And the nearest you get to a villain. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I think the nearest you get to a villain, and rightly so, are the people who knowingly and maliciously perpetuate those myths as opposed to trying to dismantle them. Yeah. And those people do deserve opprobriation. They do deserve shunning. Yeah. Because they are making things worse.
Deserve, but,
Well, but this is it, right? But that's where, but interestingly too, I love the moment when Tate's name finally comes up, and literally the response of the adults is like, "Oh, that wanker."
It's like, right?
It's on one level, it's like, well, yeah, good. Let's not give him the weight he deserves, sure. But on another level, it's like, I mean, it's pretty fucking bad news, actually.
Yes, and also what the show is doing is saying, you know what, yeah, that wanker, let's dismiss him. But you know what? You have created no, that's not fair. But you have perpetuated the vacuum into which he slithers.
Right.
You haven't provided anything for your sons. You haven't modeled good behavior. You haven't you can't talk to your children.
And how brilliant is that, right? Do you notice, and this was genius, I mean, everything about this show is genius, but one of the genius bits, and again, this is in episode 2, is when you realise that Luke Bascom, who's played by Ashley Walters, who's a fucking amazing, I mean, everyone's amazing in this, but he is so good. And you realise in episode 2, like, actually, him and his son are going through Thank
So,
God, not in the
yeah,
same scale, but they are
no,
they have a similar problem. There is a similar
yes.
alienation between D.I. Bascom and his son as there is between Eddie Miller and his.
I
Um,
love the sequence when his son is brilliant, and
yes,
he is
it's another
trying.
fantastic performance.
He's a
Yeah.
kid, he's a teenager, so he isn't
Yes.
quite articulate enough. He hasn't quite got it in him, and also he doesn't know how to talk to his dad because his dad doesn't talk to him. That's very
Right.
clear, right?
Yeah,
He
absolutely.
he's trying to say to him, "Look, you are not getting this," and of course, his dad is the top.
Yeah.
He's not gonna, to his credit, he does try. He does
Yeah.
try, but you get this implication of a history between them where there hasn't been communication, or where his son has tried to talk to him and he's
Yeah.
kind of dismissed him, or he's done the dad thing where he pretends to listen, but he's not really listening. And the son
There's
is
an
obviously,
estrangement, right? There's a kind of estrangement between them, or at the very
and
least
this
an
is
awkwardness. Yeah.
it's so real. It's so real
Yeah.
because, this is something that's true almost universally for sons and their fathers. It's almost universal. There is always a gap. Sometimes it's bigger, sometimes it's smaller. Sometimes you are able to heal it,
Mm.
sometimes you're not. But particularly within the social classes that we're talking about and the
Yeah.
environments that we're talking about,
Yeah.
there is this, it's not just a gap, it's a gulf. It's an
Yeah.
abyss at this point. And some of that has been perpetuated by cultural circumstances, like the technology, for example, social media.
Yeah.
They keep saying, oh, he was just on his computer, wasn't he? He was all right. He
Yeah.
was on it,
Yeah.
he was safe.
We thought it was
He,
okay. He was sitting in his
but-
room.
and again,
Yeah.
it's what you were just talking about earlier when you said, even you didn't understand how some of this stuff is spreading.
Yeah.
And that's it, right? That's it. There is
Yeah.
this gigantic generational abyss that's
Yeah.
happening at the moment, and it's
Yeah.
not getting smaller.
No, this is it, because the technology's accelerating as well, and therefore the gap is accelerating, or the
Mhm.
size. I mean, like, because I knew the platforms that were being spoken about, and once the use of the emojis and the so forth was decoded for me, it made sense.
Yes.
So I wasn't I wasn't like, what's an emoji? I had enough
Yeah.
so I could get caught up. But I tell you what, it was a lurch, because I got a 15-year-old daughter,
Right.
and I did not know this stuff. I did not know this stuff.
No,
You know,
a
and it's like,
15-year-old queer daughter, which in a
well,
weird way, Kit, in a
yeah,
weird way insulates her,
it in this particular
in
instance,
this
for this
strange
particular
way,
issue.
in this particular, I mean, obviously it comes with a whole raft of others, I mean, like a
There
whole
may
raft
be
of
some other
others.
shit to deal with down the line, but yeah,
But
no, you're right. Yeah,
this is what's really strange. I mean, what's very, I mean, I think we may have discussed this before, but what's very common in queer circles these days is talking about the straights. It's really
sure.
common because we are like, what is wrong with them?
Are the straights okay? And
What? Yes, are the
they are
straights
not.
okay? And
No.
the universal opinion is they are not.
The straights are very much not okay. No.
Very much not okay. The weird thing about being like a queer person is that very often you are excluded from these narratives. That's just the way it's always been. You are excluded from them. So, I mean, that's why traditionally there's so much fucking hatred for gay men in particular.
Sure.
It's all bound up with misogyny. It's because we question by our very nature gender prescriptions and binaries, and
it's also, I would say, bound up in patriarchy and patriarchal masculinity's view of itself.
Exactly
for the simple reason that, like, I mean, when you look at a lot of the really unpleasant stereotypes about gay men, and I'm talking particularly about the kind of the leans towards violence in particular, that kind of a completely fault, the kind of idea, like, so much of that very clearly comes from heterosexual males' view of themselves and their own desires, and projecting that across into queer culture, saying, well, they must all be like, and it's like, well,
of course it is. It's also, I mean, it's really complex. There's a lot going on there. I mean, one thing that's one of the other things, of course, is the fact that, most straight men do have the odd queer fantasy every now and then, or there's the odd person who they find attractive.
Sure.
And there is this patriarchal conditioned lurch away from that, this self-loathing that occurs,
Yeah.
It's exactly what's happening with, like, the trans community now. I mean, the amount of straight guys who fetishize trans women is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And they use the performance of hatred as a kind of shield for themselves. That's part of it too. That's part of it too. And also, I mean, like, there's a certain freedom in queer culture. There is. It's why if you gave me the button and said, "Would you like to, would you
Sure.
be straight?" I'd be like, "Fucking no,
No, thanks.
absolutely fucking not." No. There is a freedom in being queer. We're allowed to kind of look pretty,
Sure,
We're allowed to dress how we want. We're allowed to defy certain prescriptions, and there is an almost baked in identity from that, certainly from the struggles of being queer as well, right? There is a narrative there which gives us a certain core of identity, which for the longest time your kind of straight white male hasn't had. And that vacuum is where this self-loathing is coming from, and it's where these worms, these insincere grifters like Andrew Tate, like Nigel Farage, like all of them, Elon Musk, all of them. That's where they're slithering in. And you know what? You can't just blame them. And that's what the genius of this show. It says absolutely. This. We can't just blame them because we've failed too, by the way.
Yeah.
All of us have failed as well.
No, I agree.
We've allowed that vacuum. We've allowed that vacuum. And how often on the left do you find this discussion coming up and it's automatically dismissed? How often does that happen?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true.
For me, it happens a lot. I'll be honest. I've seen it happen a lot where they're just not interested in talking about it. And it's that dismissal. It's that vacuum that has allowed for these atrocities to occur and allowed for this poison take root in our young men, in our boys, in our children,
I will say as well, though, I think it's part of a cultural trend that is driven by the right, but is infected far too much to the left as well, which is a disease about obliterating nuance.
Right.
I think to come back to Stephen Graham as Eddie Miller, because I think it's for me the best example of this in the show. And it's, let's just briefly, rehearse the fact that this was based on an idea by Stephen Graham. He read about these stabbings that had happened in Liverpool, which is his hometown. He was horrified by it. He wanted to learn more about it. Gradually, the idea of this show emerged from that, and he co-wrote it as well. So he co-wrote some of the episodes with Jack Thorne. I think all of them actually with Jack Thorne. So this is clearly a project that's really important to Graham. And Graham is one of those, very rare breed of a genuine, like, working class kid who has become an actor and has become a world famous, movie star actor. He does a lot of TV. He does mainly
loads
TV,
of stuff, doesn't he?
He's done a lot of cinema as well. Yeah,
big profile stuff as well, right? He's in really big shows and movies and whatnot.
He was in The Irishman, which is the last Scorsese epic.
Yeah.
He talked about having to punch Al Pacino in The Irishman and how that was just impossible.
The highlights,
No, it was impossible. He was just like, I can't punch. It's Al Pacino. What are you talking about? I can't punch Al Pacino.
I can't punch Al Pacino.
What are you? That's fucking Scarface. I can't punch Scarface. So like he's a fan as well as being an artist. But so for him, and he's never lost touch with his working class roots as well, and that's really important. And he wanted to get back to that. He wanted to write about something he saw happening that was upsetting him. And great. I think all great art has to start with someone or a group of people sitting around with this burning question of why. I think that's the root of most great art, is where people sit around saying, why does this happen? Why has this happened? Why do people do this? Why do people think this? Why do people act like this? Whatever that question is, that burning need to try and answer. And of course the show doesn't answer it. What it does is ask a shitload more questions.
Actually, just as an aside, that ending fucking killed me.
Oh god.
That where it just cuts.
Yep.
And there's nothing. There's no answer. There's no conclusion.
Resolution.
There's no resolution. There's no even suggestion of where the characters go from here, because the show isn't interested in providing you pat answers or by diluting what it's trying to say by saying, but here's the solution. Here's what happens later. Here's how the characters go on. It's like, well, how do the characters go on after this? How does anyone go on after this?
That's another thing that I think truly great art does. It doesn't provide you with the answer. It leaves you with the question. It leaves you with the question. Sat there on your sofa. Okay, now what? You need to go out into the world and answer that fucking question for yourself. And I think that's exactly what the show is trying to do.
closing on Eddie
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
his son's room.
Yeah.
Fucking hell.
But to go to the point,
Jesus.
I know, it's absolutely phenomenal. But to get to the point, to you know, to focus in on Eddie as a character to illustrate this point about nuance, Eddie is clearly someone who is trying to be a good dad.
Yes, he's trying. Yes, that's. I mean,
And he clearly does care about his kids. He clearly does love his kids. He clearly loves his wife.
Yeah.
He's clearly, by most of the standards we would draw, he's clearly a good man.
Yes,
If that's a phrase that even means anything. Like he's not cheating. He's not an alcoholic. He's not, you know,
he's not abusive.
He's not abusive. He's not cruel. He's not mistreating anybody.
He's not neglectful, right?
He's not neglectful. He works very long hours.
Mm-hmm.
He's tired all the time.
Yeah.
Again, this is something that no one talks about this anymore. Like we talk about axis of oppression all the time, and we very rightly talk about identity politics a lot, and they are important because they are lines of oppression. We never fucking talk about class as a line of oppression.
Right. Here's another reason why the right fucking hate it, right? Because it gets at this, that these problems only occur when there is profound deprivation.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the only, that's the swamp in which they ferment. Mm-hmm. This kind of identity crisis and the violence that necessarily comes from it only occurs when people are operating in deprivation, when parents are exhausted and frustrated and can't spend time with their children and can't even like educate themselves on how to spend time with their children, can't learn how to communicate with them.
And this is the thing, when you say deprivation, this is really important. We're talking about now, yes, sometimes obviously economic deprivation is a massive component to it, but we are also talking very clearly, and you articulated there, about social deprivation.
Yes.
Because they are not poor, this family. He owns a small business. It is reasonably successful. They have a pretty decent house. Yeah. You know, their lifestyle is not extravagant, but it's also clearly not impoverished. They have clothes. They have their own room. You know, there's heating, there's light, there's food. They are catered for. But in order for that modest lifestyle to be maintained, their father has to work every single fucking hour God sends.
Ultimately, he has to be absent, right? That's the great sin, right? That's the great sin. And it's one that he has no choice in.
Exactly. His choice is between having his family live in total, you know, physical poverty or provide that social poverty to his family because he can't be there because he has to provide.
Yeah, and that's a real terror of his, right? Because, of course, that comes up. That comes up in conversation. Again, when the wife talks about wanting to move.
Yeah. Because that's Graham injecting because he's from working class Liverpool. He knows what the bread line looks like. Yeah. He started there. He's seen that. Like Barker. Mm-hmm. He's lived through that up close. He's seen it. So he knows. He knows what that reality is like. And so does this character. And Eddie will work all the hours God sends because he will not see his family in that circumstance.
Yeah.
But so yeah, he does have failings. He has a temper and he passes it on to his son. Mm-hmm. And that is one ingredient in this crisis. It's not the only ingredient. There are others, but it is one of the necessary preconditions for what his son ends up doing. He has to have that explosive temper, and he inherits that from his father's behavior. His father is absent, so he doesn't know that what his kid's doing on the computer in his room, and he's not engaged enough in his life. They are alienated enough from each other that they're not having the kinds of conversations they need to have.
Yeah.
And listen, there's no shortcut. I mean, I can say this as a parent myself now, I have a 15-year-old. Like, I've been extraordinarily fortunate with my kid, but also, and I'm not patting myself on the back about this, I'm lucky because I have the kind of job that allows me to do this. I put the fucking hours in. But I can only put the hours in because I have a middle-class job that lets me finish work at 5:30.
Right.
And that still, between myself and my wife and our joint incomes, we can afford to pay the rent. If I didn't have that, if I was working a kind of job Eddie Miller had to work, then I wouldn't have been able to put the hours in. We wouldn't have the level of communication we do currently. That's privilege.
Yeah.
That's my privilege. It's not It's not a virtue. It's not something virtuous about me.
It's circumstance, right?
It's circumstance that have allowed me to do that. And I've worked to attain those circumstances. It's still lucky that I was able to attain them. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not it's not an either or. I've put the hours in, I've put the work in. Also, I've been incredibly fortunate in any number of ways to have ended up in the position that I've ended up in. And so the show does this brilliant job where we see very clearly Eddie's flaws and faults, and we see the devastating impact that they have had along with the other factors.
Yep.
But we do not blame Eddie.
Not for an instant.
We do not hate
Not for an
Eddie.
instant.
In fact,
no.
we feel desperately sad for Eddie.
Yeah.
We feel desperately sad for Eddie's son.
That final episode. Christ. I was in bits. Like very early on, I was in bits. Like, and all the run through, because I can see the performance is beautiful.
Yes.
The performance is so nuanced. He's holding it together, right? They're trying to do that again. I mean, this is another fault of British culture and society. Right? It's another sickness of British society, which is we don't allow ourselves to experience these emotions and to process them. Right. We just get on. Yeah. There is normality to be maintained, even when normality is not even a concept anymore.
No,
normality is dead. Normality under these circumstances, nothing is holding together anymore, right?
Yeah.
But you can see him trying.
And there's so much in that as well, like the casual cruelty of the people just writing the word nonce on the side of his van, which doesn't. And again, I think one of the things that I found just so fucking powerful about that is when the family are even, I mean, they're not quite discussing it because they're a bit too upset for it to be a discussion, but they're all like, what do they mean?
Yeah.
I'm not a nonce. They mean he killed her. He didn't. Who's a nonce? What does he even? It doesn't even make sense.
Right? And what are they expressing? What is this on a wider level, right? When you look at this on a sociological level, what is this actually doing? It's a form of victim blaming, isn't it?
It's pure scapegoatism, right?
It's pure scapegoating. It's pure scapegoating because,
we do. Let's not forget, we live in a country that 10 or 15 years ago, I think 15, well, maybe closer to 20 years ago now, as a result of a campaign to publish the names and addresses of known paedophiles by one of our illustrious tabloid newspapers, combined with a group of people who had a reading age of about 7. There was an angry mob that literally burned down a pediatrician's house. That is something that happened in this country about 20 years ago. So nonce on the side of a van of a father of a child murderer, sure.
It's very real. I mean, it's very realistic. Right? Yeah, it's so believable. It's in fact, it's not only believable, it's almost like prophetic, it's prescient. It's like that is what happens. That is what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you want to look at, just briefly, if we glance over the pond, this is the same thing that's happening in the States, except for now the useful buzz phrase is gang. So if you're in a gang, if the US government decides you're in a gang, suddenly due process doesn't exist for you anymore. You can be sent to a concentration camp in a foreign country for the rest of your life, which will be a lot shorter than it was supposed to be because you were in a gang.
Yeah.
What does that even mean? Whatever they decide it means.
Whatever they want, right? It's authoritarian because there's no due process. Euphemism.
Because as soon as you're in a gang, you're denied due process, which means they say you're in a gang and that's it. You're in a gang. Because there's no due process to determine whether or not you're in a fucking gang. They've just said it. Like, if I was an Insane Clown Posse fan, I would be looking to emigrate to Canada right now. Because Juggalos were declared a gang by the FBI like 15 years ago. So I would be getting the fuck out of Dodge if I was those guys.
If you just had, like, tattoos of any kind.
Well, this is it, right? So scapegoating that's exactly what it is, and it's just, and again, it's the thing about the right. It's what you were saying. It's like there is no ideology at the heart of the right. There is no core to the far right in terms of it's all aesthetics and violence. That's all it is. If you want to understand the far right, just understand bullies. That's all you need, because that's all they are. That's all they'll ever be. And
bullies
what do bullies
and narcissists,
do? Exactly. Well, but and we repeat
it's enshrined narcissism. That's
of course it is. With a occasionally with a fetching trench coat, but basically, in this particular case, what that means is they'll just co-opt anything that will hurt. Because why do they write nonce to the fan? Because it will hurt him. That's it. It's just a way of causing pain. That's it. It's not anymore. There is no reasoning with it because there's no reason behind it. It's just funny. It's just funny because it'll make him cry, and that's funny.
And what does that say? What is that expressing on like on a society-wide level?
I've been thinking about this a lot. I think I've mentioned this before to you. There was a person who used to write about, a guy called Jacob. He used to write about the Battlestar Galactica show when it was broadcasting, and he talked about. I'm going to do some spoilers for season 3 or 4 of Battlestar Galactica, the remake.
Just in case, guys.
So if anyone's, there's a sequence in that where the second Battlestar turns up. I can't remember what it was called. but there was a second Battlestar and it survived, and they had a version of Six, the female Cylon, on board. And she was basically, I mean, it's implied, it's not, there's nothing shown graphically on the show, but it's implied that she's basically been gang raped probably for months by the crew of the ship. She's been chained up in a room with a sign holder that says "Do disturb," and she's just been used in that way for months. And you know, in the context of the show, this is a person who is part of a genocidal group. The Cylons are attempting to genocide the human race, so that's who she is. She is part of that. She is a Cylon. She has been involved in the attempted genocide of the human race, and that is the punishment that this crew have decided should be meted out to her. And I remember this guy Jacob writing about that episode and saying, the thing is, when someone has committed a crime so awful that any punishment is basically permissible, the punishment you choose says far more about you than it does about them.
Of course. Because
at that point, when you are given genuine moral carte blanche on your capacity for cruelty, you will reveal your capacity for cruelty.
That's right. And your inclination, you'll reveal who and what you are, right?
Exactly. And I think that's the thing for me, is like moments like that. That's why they kind of, I mean, that's, you know, moments like that, the nonce moment on the van, that I share in that moment of kind of almost existential despair that the family feel. Yeah. Because it's like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do in the face of this?
Right. It's profound impotence, isn't it? There is nothing you can do. There's no argument to be had. There's no appeal to be made. They try, don't it? They call the police and they're like, well, what do you want? You know, do you want us to send someone down? What do you want us to do? There's no system for this, right?
Not for that. No, that's right.
And of course, that impotence is a microcosm of what they're feeling more generally, of course, because that is an expression of the way they are in culture now, right?
Yep.
Because of this, that's where they are now. Through no particular fault of their own.
I would say, interested, building on what I just said with the galactic thing and that analogy, I would say it's not actually that's the space they occupy now. It has revealed the space they always occupied and didn't realise. Right, actually, we're all in that powerlessness space.
And all it takes, right? All it takes is for something particular to happen, right? It could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be this extreme.
No,
it could be anything. It could be, I don't know, an accusation of something, a rumor of something, whatever. It could be, as we've already discussed, some tabloid arbitrarily deciding to publish your address or your name or something. It could be any number of things. There is something else here, isn't there? There is the evil of society, right?
Society in quote marks. Yeah, absolutely.
In quote marks, right. There is that tendency for society to turn upon itself in extremis.
Well, but I think as well, it really is that thing of like the moral permission people will give themselves to behave towards people that they consider to be beyond the pale, right? Yeah. And just that notion of, and again, that's very, I think at its heart, it's a very fascist notion, actually, because that's another, it's like, it's all right to be a bully if you're bullying someone that's an asshole, right?
That's awful, right? Yeah.
I think you're still probably a bully, though, and that's not a good thing to be. And this is not, look, I mean, self-defense is self-defense. You know, if someone is coming towards you and you have to protect your family, you do what you got to do. That's fine. Yep. And frankly, whether or not you take any pleasure in that is between you and your God. I don't care. But I do think it's a very different proposition to this, where it's, you know, it's victimization, and it's and it's victimization of people can't fight back. Well, that's the definition of bullying.
Well, it's cowardice as well, isn't it? I mean, if you have any like genuine conviction, then you confront, right? You don't just do something cowardly and run away.
And that's I think and that's the difference between bullying and between like a principled anti-fascist stance that says like, no, you don't get to walk down this particular street with that particular flag. You will have to go through us. Yeah. But that's there's nothing bullying about that. That's a straightforward confrontation.
That's straightforward self-defense. Exactly. That is straightforward self-defense. We know what that flag means. We know what the intention is here. The intention is to cause harm. We are saying no.
But you're also right that it's straightforward confrontation. It's straightforward. There's no cowardice there. There's no. Right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but I think it's really, for me, the way that the show, and because here's the thing, right? My favorite episode is the third episode,
Yeah,
and
definitely. Me
I
too.
think that is just. I rewatched it today again, and I found it even more powerful this time. Weirdly, because like you, I think the first time through the whole thing, I was just a little bit wowed by the technicals, which we haven't really talked about.
Oh, I
but
knew I had to watch it again. I knew I had to watch it twice.
And there's the thing I'd forgotten about, actually, about this. I said it was almost a two-hander. It is, and it's almost. I mean, sorry, I'm remembering something you said earlier about the energy of doing a single take. The energy is the energy of theatre, because the reason theatre is so powerful is because you are in the room with the audience, and the audience is in the room with you, and there's no take two. You either do it or you don't. It's like live music in that respect. There is a high wire aspect.
Yeah, of course there is. Isn't it? There's something in the air.
Yeah, it's exciting, and there are it depends. Some actors are screen actors exclusively, and that's where they live. But I think for a lot of actors, they never quite lose their love of theatre, because there is something about the adrenaline of that.
Yeah,
it is a challenge. And there are challenges in screen acting too. It's a different kind of acting, and there's challenges in both, and there's talent and skill in both. I'm not talking. I'm not making a value judgment here, but I am saying that there's definitely an adrenaline junkie quality to theatre, and this show recreates that by doing the one take thing. And for me, the third episode is the purest distillation of it, because you could do it as a stage play if you wanted.
Absolutely, that one episode, because everything is implied in that conversation.
It's all happening in one room too.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. Like physical, like you could stage that. You'd have to trim the top and tail a little bit, or you'd have to figure out a way. But like the core of that episode, and the vast majority of the screen time, is two people, one room, one table, two chairs, one half-eaten sandwich.
And like on so many levels, the balls of that. Just the sheer
all of it. I mean, a 13-year-old undiscovered, this, admittedly, paired off against a very experienced, very skilled actor, admittedly, but still, one take.
Yeah.
Did you read about this? There's a moment, the yawn, right?
Yes, there were things that he did that were just like human, right? They were just breaking the performance, but he worked it in, right?
Yeah,
he worked it into the performance.
Because I think for each one they did 3 or 4 takes, and the one that they used for that was, I think, take 3, and he yawned because he was just tired.
Yeah,
the kid was just tired, and he just yawned.
That's brilliant, because
she just breaks off and says, "Am I boring you?" And he says, "No," and he smiles. But
it's brilliant because it's so real, right? It's so real. He's not just tired, tired of the situation or the conversation. He's tired of being him now. He's tired of just existing now.
Yeah, and he's tired of being in a fucking mental institute. I mean, that's the other thing. He keeps picking away at the edges of it. Like, it doesn't come full bore, and but in the same way that you've got the thing about Graham not being physically present because he's working a job, because he has to work a job to provide for the house and blah, blah, blah. You have that moment where it's like, I shouldn't even be in here. Why am I in a night? And it's because there's no room in regular juvie for you.
Right.
And this is the best place they've got for you. Like, nothing's ideal. Nothing's where it's supposed to be.
Everything is splintered and fractured and wrong.
And nothing's working the way it's supposed to work. And I think that's really powerful. But the theatre of that third episode is really important as well. And it is still my favourite episode. But having watched it again today, episode 4 is so important. It's so vital. Yeah. And a lot of it is, I think, because of what they do with Graham's character, with Eddie Miller, and the way he is in that. Because you see all of the flaws. And here's the beauty of it. What I think is really clever about it is, through his performance and through the writing, it's made clear to the audience that he is acutely aware of every single mistake he's made. Yeah. Or every single, including some that aren't really his fault. I mean, like the not being there and being too tired thing. Well, what were you going to fucking do?
What was he going to do? By his own standards, he was doing. I mean, the way patriarchy works with regards to Eddie's particular social class is it markets that as noble. Yeah. I'm providing for my family. I'm making a sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
By not being with my son and my daughter for these particular moments, I'm providing. I'm doing what men are supposed to do.
and where the manosphere, exploits that emotional vulnerability of men in that situation, which is a real situation a lot of men is it then starts dropping the poison in there, and your fucking bitch wife doesn't appreciate you doing that.
That's it, right? That's right, yeah.
And why isn't she fucking,
right.
blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
When the answer is because she's got a job too, motherfucker.
She's got a job too, you morons. Yeah, absolutely. And also, I mean, I call them morons, and they're not. That's the worst thing. They are acutely conscious of what they're doing. They are monsters. They're actually monsters who I would burn at the fucking stake if I could only get a hold of them. They are monsters, these people. They are actual narcissists and psychopaths in the by very definition, who have somehow found a way of weaponizing that quality in themselves.
Yeah, and I do think as a society we don't currently have efficient defense mechanisms against narcissistic psychopaths who have figured out how to weaponize it, and I think it is something that we urgently need to develop as a species.
As a matter of survival.
I've felt that way for some time, but I agree it's become a matter of survival at this point.
I mean, the other thing, of course, is the fact that if we operated in social systems that were in any way adequate or healthy, then these monsters would not even... our children would be able to recognize them for what they are. They would be able to see their insincerity. They would be able to see that they're grifters and they only want money and influence and power, and that they are lying. It would be obvious, because it's obvious to us, right?
It is obvious to us, but that's where the poison of patriarchy has done its work, because it's created enough vulnerability.
Yeah,
they're not inventing this shit out of whole cloth. What they're doing is taking pre-existing shit and turning it up to 11.
That's it. They've
obliterating nuance and adding in a bunch of lies. I mean, my God, the bit. And it kills me every time. It hurt me even worse this time watching it, when the kid says he thinks he's ugly.
Oh, fucking hell.
And it just rips my fucking stomach out.
Not.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, kid, like, come on. And again, it's as an acting moment, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And here's the thing, like, I don't know about you, but I remember being a teenage boy, and I definitely had moments where I felt completely fucking unlovable.
Oh, fucking hell. Well, yeah.
And that was just, that was just, I think that's just a fact of being a fucking teenager.
This speaks to another wider problem that we've got in this culture. And this is actually very common amongst most cultures, where even from when I was a kid, as time has gone on, we have diminished spaces for teenagers. Like every level, right?
Yep.
So things like when I was a kid, I remember, and you can see this in microcosm, right? When I was a kid, there were things like children's television, right?
Yeah.
So it would start at 3:00 in the afternoon, and you'd get like the really young children's stuff. Then as time would go on, as if you were going to like 4:00, it would graduate to programming for 8 to 10-year-olds, and then from around 5:00, you'd get the stuff that parents and children, like older children, could watch together.
Yeah.
The children's dramas, things like Nightmare and whatnot. And that created
Biker Grove, Grange Hill, right?
Biker Grove, Grange Hill. This stuff that gave teenagers and older children cultural space, and also something to interact with their parents around, like cultural commonality.
Yeah.
And that, along with things like after-school clubs, like hobby club, all of this stuff has just space, physical, cultural space for teenagers and young children, older children rather, has diminished and diminished and diminished and diminished, to the point whereby they are now basically kind of just... they are temporary embarrassments. They are just temporary inconveniences until they're old enough to start working and paying taxes, right?
I'll tell you exactly what they are now. They are either cocooned in their room at the mercy of whatever social media is throwing at them, or they're on the street.
Yeah.
Neither of which are ideal environments for teenagers to be in.
No, absolutely
It's just not. And I say that as one of the most indoor kids you'll ever fucking meet.
Yeah.
But it's not. Neither of those are healthy environments for kids. I've been in both. I was in both as a teenager, and neither of them were healthy environments.
Right.
And I was on the mean streets of a village with like a population of 450, so I couldn't get up to much. But I fucking tried.
Yeah.
And it would have been better if there had been a social space where I could have been with other teenagers and with minimal but some adult supervision. That's the key.
Of
And
course.
minimal adult supervision that isn't your fucking parents as well, because you do need that space away from that.
So you've got some other adult input as well, right?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
also fucking important.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. That's right. But and you know, these things in terms of like national budget, these things cost, you know, like a hundredth of a penny from everyone's fucking income tax, and you could have a network of these in the country tomorrow. But guess what?
Absolutely.
No, we can't afford it. We can't afford it. We can't afford
that. No, of course not.
Prisons, sure. Yeah, we can afford
Absolutely. We can also afford to pay like the higher ups at the post office and whatnot. We can afford to pay them off and whatnot. Obviously, because they come from the right social class.
I'm glad you said that,
social class,
because this is something that I did want to kind of bring out as well. One of the other interesting things I think about Adolescence is it's clearly been a shattering presence in the good way. Like it's shattered a lot of complacency. It started a lot of conversations, and as I said, it's enabled conversations to coalesce that have been trying to happen, and that's really powerful.
I sincerely hope a lot of fathers are watching it. Fathers of boys. I sincerely, and of women as well, of girls as well. You know.
But this is where I think Stephen Graham is so brilliant, because like there will be a lot of people of that background who will follow Stephen Graham because he's Stephen Graham, and because of his background and because of how he's been in this career. So I think it will do a lot of good for that. I think it will. And I think that's really important. And again, this is Graham as a man who understands. I think, he understands his class background. He understands what he's had to overcome. He also understands the privilege he experiences now. I mean, I cannot think of a better way of using that privilege that you have as an artist than the way he's using it to make shows like this. I think that is just so admirable. But I will also say this. It's interesting to me that this also represents one of a series of this kind of limited series dramas that have come out in the last year or so. I think, because you mentioned the post office, that's what made me think of it. There was that really impressive, I think it was an ITV drama about the post office scandal.
With Toby Jones,
that actually single-handedly kind of
kick-started the conversation, right? I mean, it was happening in other spaces, but they were always like marginalized spaces, like muted spaces.
Look how much quicker the compensation process started to happen once that show hit the airwaves. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it turbocharged something that had taken decades.
I mean, don't get me wrong; it's still not enough.
No, and it's still not resolved.
A lot of the people who have gone on to do better things should be fucking arrested. But
absolutely. But the thing is this, like, there have been instances of this in the past with TV dramas and with movies, indeed, and sometimes they have an impact and sometimes they don't. I mean, I think a lot about Hillsborough and how there's been a couple of incredibly powerful bits of drama / documentary about that. I mean, Jimmy McGovern, actually, the guy who wrote Cracker, went on to do a show about Hillsborough, which had Christopher Eccleston in, which was a devastating bit of telly. Did those shows and subsequent movies of that kind, did they make a difference? Yes, I think they did. I think they kept Hillsborough in the public mind, and I think they forced, in some cases, like second inquiries and things like that. I still think, again, funny enough, as with the post office scandal, has justice been done? Not really. Is it going to be? Probably not at this point.
Probably not.
We know that there were certain individuals who were responsible for what happened that day. There were structural issues as well, but there were also certain individuals who have culpability. Yeah. And we know in the police force in particular, and we also know, and we know who they are, that there were individuals within the government that spread lies about what
within
happened.
The press as well.
Yeah,
who knew exactly what they were doing. Knew exactly what they were doing.
A lot of those people are dead, but none of them will ever be held accountable. Yeah. And that
which is a shame.
Well, I think it's more than a shame. I think it's a problem.
If there is a hell,
Well, yeah. But I don't think there is, unfortunately. But the thing is, like, it's interesting to me how, and again, this is what you want to know why the right hates this stuff. Because this is demonstrating that despite all of their bullshit about entertainment being popcorn and pointless and blah, 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 it actually art can actually affect change in the real world.
Yes,
it can actually empower people to have conversations.
They know on one level or another, whether it's sort of historical or whatever, they know that this is true. It's why they always, and I mean, like every right-wing government, every right-wing movement in every culture ever attacks the arts. Always. It's why
Yep.
they do it, because it is corrosive to them.
Yeah.
It exposes and it dissects and it shines the unflattering light on their ugliness. It's why they do it. And it's why the backlash against it. It's because it's true. Again, it's truthfulness. It's the truthfulness at the heart of good art. That's what they can't abide. It's what they can't stand. And it's why it's so essential. It's why sincerity, I mean, we bang on about this all the time, but sincerity in art is so essential, and why there has to be space for it. It's why there has to be space for it.
That's right. And by the way, as well, it's not because of sincerity will inevitably lead to art whose politics we agree with. Actually, often quite the reverse. That's not the point, because art is not primary. Although all art is inherently political, art in and of itself is not a political exercise. It's an attempt at expression. It's just that because we are political creatures, what we express will be political as well. That's just an inevitability. It's not something we inject. Again, that's the right-wing propaganda. Oh, well, they're trying to push politics. They're trying to push an agenda. No, we all have them inherent to us. Whatever it is that we care about, it's informed by politics, and whatever we do in the world is political. So art is political. That's just a fact. So is what you choose to spend your money on is political. The way you dress is political. The language you choose to use or not use, all of these are political decisions. Like, politics infuses everything. It's a lie to pretend that there is such a thing as apolitical. The degree to which you choose to engage with that reality is entirely up to you, of course. But, it's naive to assume or suggest otherwise. It's not even naive. It's just wrong. It's
wrong, and it's insincere again. I mean, this is the other thing you have to be very wary of from the right, because they don't engage in sincerity. This is why it's so corrosive to them. Their entire, it's not just their politics, it's everything about them. Everything about who they are. Everything is masks upon masks, performance upon performance. It's all about agenda and obfuscation. They don't engage in sincerity, so they don't understand it. They actually don't understand it when people are engaging in sincerity.
And therefore every accusation is a confession, because when they turn around and say, oh, well, they flip the race of the child involved in this case.
No, this is what you would do if you were creating this. This is what you would do.
No, because because you're trying to pretend it's propaganda, because it's actually shining a light on something you do not want light to be shone on. So you have to find a way to dismiss it. You have to find a way to attack it. I mean, I cannot get over, and I want to talk about at least one other thing about the first episode, and this is going back to Graham and Graham's performance. So, we talked about what we said, that he does in the fourth episode, which is amazing. For me, as much as episode 3 is my favorite, my single favorite shot in the entire show, and it's because of Stephen Graham entirely, because it's about him. So in the first episode, the son is arrested. He's taken to the local police station, where he's put in the holding cells, and then they have to search him. Now he's taken into a room. He's chosen his father to be his responsible adult, so his father is there representing his interests. His lawyer is also there, and I believe there's a nurse present in this particular room as well, because they have to take a DNA sample. They're taking cheek swabs and maybe drawing blood, and then they have to do a strip search. And the way the show handles this is, there are 2 male officers who are conducting the search, and they take the son off, and the responsible adult is permitted to witness the search, and the 2 other advocates for the child, which is the lawyer and the nurse, turn their backs. So they don't witness the search, and the camera goes to Graham, who is watching his son being strip searched by these 2 officers. And the shot is held for, it's probably only like 90 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, but it is one of the longest 2 minutes I've ever experienced in cinema, because the camera stays on Graham's face, and all you hear is, "Can you remove that now? I just need to check here." And then the officers are giving notes to each other to record for the record what they've seen, what they're observing, and all you have is Graham's face as he witnesses his son going through this.
And his most vulnerable, right?
It is one of the most incredible pieces of screen acting I have ever seen. because none of what's happening is actually happening,
No,
obviously.
of course.
But it's
But
brilliantly written. So the
yeah,
dialogue creates the images of what is happening in your head as the viewer, and Graham just puts himself through it. He just puts himself through it as a father in that
yeah,
moment. And it is just incredible. And again, the vulnerability
yeah,
and the humanity of that moment. And it's not like his son's guilty. His son has done this unspeakable
yes,
crime.
yeah,
And actually, if someone does a crime like that, this is probably a necessary procedure, actually.
hmm
And it's still almost impossible to watch
yeah.
because it is so painful. And there's nothing graphic happening. That's
No,
the genius of it. This is about emotion. This is just
that's
about
it, right?
raw humanity. And it's one of the most extraordinary. I mean, I remember just turning to my wife after watching that scene. We just looked at each other. I was just like, so just every fucking award in the world, right? We're just giving them to
Yeah,
him. That like,
yeah.
you don't get an Oscar for TV shows, but you fucking should, because that was, I've never seen anything like that.
No, I'm of the opinion that on like multiple technical levels, they need to create new awards for
Right.
this.
Yeah. And they need to call them the
just
Adolescence Awards.
yeah,
And that gives
yeah,
everyone else something to shoot for from now on. Like,
yeah.
this is how good it can be.
It's a high watermark. I
Yeah,
mean,
it really is.
that's like
Yeah.
just beyond anything else. It's a high watermark in
Yeah.
like and I'm not even not entertainment, but televisual media, televisual storytelling. It is an unbelievable piece of work, and it's a very long time since something certainly out of the UK got me like this.
Hmm.
It is a very, very long time. I mean,
And the thing is, right, there's nothing in what I think is really impressive is there's nothing in here that hasn't been done before. Single shot's been done before, loads of times. Loads of people have done single shot.
yeah.
It is impressive when it's done well, and it's not easy to do, and it's not done often, but it is there. It's existed. Social drama, social issues, these have been covered. Issues around, I mean, crime is like every other fucking show on television is about crime one way or another. Why is this so fucking special? It's so fucking special because it's brilliantly written, it's brilliantly conceived, and then brilliantly written, and then every single person working on it has brought their A game, their top draw, fucking, from the camera operators, the directors, the editors, the actors, the writers, every single person working on this.
I think they must have knew. They must have known somewhere in their minds that this is weighty stuff. We cannot. We have to give this everything.
Yeah.
Because we can't short sell this. We can't.
And for me, that starts with Graham. That starts with Graham seeing those hideous crimes happening in his hometown and just being like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
And trying to answer that question. And putting pen to paper and then roping people in and getting it done and just saying like, no, we need to talk about this.
And we need to talk about it honestly. For once,
exactly.
we need to talk about it honestly without ironically, without the external political influence.
There you go.
We just need to talk about what is happening, right?
Well, the other thing about this that I love, and again, the right-wing screeching about it is so hilarious, because all of the implication of the right-wing screeching is that there is something somehow sensationalist about this. And this is anti-sensationalist.
Yeah. Oh, it's very nature, right? It's designed to be almost documentarian.
It's so naturalistic, and it's stripped. I mean, that's the thing. Like I talked earlier on about how I was expecting a twist at the end of the first. I didn't believe the kid had done it. I thought there was going to be something that would throw it into doubt, and then the next 3 episodes would be like, did he or didn't he? Right? And that was going to be because that's what I've been programmed to expect at this point from crime drama.
Right, in any other drama of its type.
Well, otherwise, what's even the fucking point?
Right?
What could the other 3 episodes even fucking be? If everything's revealed at the end of the first, do you know what I mean? Like, that's how I've been programmed. And then this show just says, no. But
I love it for that. I love it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's where the genius is. It's just saying, like, no, fuck you. This is not. This is not entertainment.
Don't need it. Yeah, and you don't need it either.
No,
you don't need that contrivance for it to be weighty and brilliant and engaging. All you need is reality. All you need is sincere human emotion on screen. And
exactly
that's
the
what you
point.
get in spades. I mean, from everyone involved, from every character involved, you just get so much going on. There's so much complexity and like
Yeah.
human reality going on in every single bloody character.
So I agree with everything you said, sincere reality on screen, but also, and this I think is the challenge, and I see this as a challenge personally as well, also in the writing,
Yes, of course. Because I mean,
conceptually.
this is very close to the kind of it's your material. This isn't it? You know, this is the
I've
kind of reality that you write, right?
I've never written anything this good. I've never written anything this real, and it does feel like a challenge, because
Mhm,
at a certain point, I will always, I think, reach for the trope. I'll always reach for the entertainment. I'll reach for the twist
mhm.
because I love those things,
Yeah,
and I love writing them. I love reading them. I enjoy that, and I'll reach for the sensational. I'm not afraid to, I'll own that. I will do
yeah.
that. I mean, I'm thinking about a piece I wrote recently that it's not going to be out for a while yet, but a novella that I've written. I really like it. I'm really proud of it, and it is quote unquote real in the sense of there's no supernatural element to it.
Mhm.
It's two characters. It's a single location for most of it, and it's very high adrenaline. It's realistic in many respects. The physics are realistic for sure.
Yeah,
I've tried to make them realistic, but it's not a real story. It's not something
right.
that could really, I mean, theoretically, could it really happen? Sure, but not really. This is
Yeah,
really, because,
this
and
is
that's why I keep going on about the fucking end of
yeah,
episode 1 and why it's so powerful,
yeah,
because that is how it happens most of the time.
yeah.
The police don't, in a murder trial where there's a murder investigation where there's a fucking child involved, they do not knock your door down with the armed police unless they've got the fucking
Right.
goods. That happens in
Yeah.
shitty drama all the time, but in real life, no.
Hmm.
In real life with real professionals, no. Actually, if they do that, they fucking know. And I tell you
Yeah.
what, man, that moment when they show the video footage,
Oh, my God.
and
Yeah.
again, I'm so programmed by media in general and by storytelling in general that I was like, I'm not seeing what I'm seeing. I can't be.
Hmm.
Because you've just fucking, my writer brain just went, well, you've
Yeah.
just blown up the entire show. What's the fucking point? What can you make 3 more hours worth of story about if you're just going to give the whole fucking story away at the end of episode 1? It's because that ain't the story we're telling. This
That's
isn't
not the
entertainment.
point, right?
What we're doing now is telling you this is what it actually fucking looks like. And
Yeah.
I've got so much, like, genuinely, I'm kind of annoyed with myself as a writer. Like, motherfucker, what have you been playing at? This is
Yeah.
how powerful and the thing is, like, I'll chat shit about that too. There will be podcasts out there of me saying like, oh, you're always better off keeping it real. The closer you to the reality is always
Uh-huh.
more interesting than the narrative. Blah, 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 blah. This fucking show, man.
You're right.
Amateur hour, man.
Yeah.
This show is
It's
like, no, you want to see what reality looks like? You want to see
yeah.
how compelling it is?
It's very clever
Fuck
because it's
me.
emphasizing the banality of atrocity.
Yes.
And in that banality, there is this incredible resonance and depth and emotion it's incredibly powerful.
You know
I
what?
mean,
You've hit the nail on the head. Sorry, not to make this all about me and my fiction failings, but
no.
no. But here's what I've realised. This is what this has taught me. I fucking love villains way too much.
Yeah.
I love a bad guy.
Oh, God,
I
tell
love
me
an
about
other.
it.
I love a monster.
Tell me
And
about it. I
this,
mean, like,
right? And don't we all? But this
Yeah.
show was like, nah, fuck
No,
you.
this
You don't
is
get that.
no.
There are
This,
monsters, but there's no
yeah,
villains.
yeah. There are no. This is real.
Yeah,
This is not your romanticized villain. I mean, in most fiction, your villain is the person who's trying to change things, and therefore has almost
sure.
immediate connection.
Yeah,
There's almost immediate connection with them. That's not true of
no,
most people in real life who are villainesque, who are monsters. They aren't that. They're
no.
establishments. They're like Jamie, right? They're confused
Yeah, they're like
and
Jamie. They're not monsters, but they have committed monstrous acts.
they've committed monstrous things,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
And
that's a
that's it.
harsh lesson, right?
Because the Hollywood version of this movie, and we've seen it a million times, it's is he or isn't he? And the kid, and you go back and forth, and then the kid reveals himself as basically a
That's right.
demonic
Yes,
entity
that's it.
in
Or
at the
like,
beginning of Act 3.
yeah, that's it. Or as though they were a psychopath all along, and
Yeah,
they were playing. That's
or
what you get, right? Yeah,
or the other version is there is some giant conspiracy to frame the kid, right? But then there's
right.
always a supervillain behind that. There's some kind
Hmm.
of arch manipulator, and again, it's not realistic. It's not. how often does that happen?
That's the version of this that Ben Shapiro's production company would make,
there
right?
you go, exactly. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of 0.01% of cases that 99% of crime fiction is based on, because
Yeah.
it's the interesting stuff. But this show is just like, no, fuck that. Let's deal with the banality of it. Let's deal with, exactly as you say, let's deal with the banal reality of
Filth,
no, it's just some fucking kid who got his mind completely fucking poisoned.
I mean,
and did an unforgivable thing.
Do you know what this also did to me? It hurtled me back to being a teenager, to being a teenage boy, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was thinking, like, so what is he going through internally? Beyond anything else, just exclude the influence of the manosphere and all that bullshit for one moment, and just remember what it was like being a teenage boy. You've got, like, the puberty, you've got all of the social stuff happening. You don't know who you are at that point. You are in this state of complete flux and transition. You are changing on every level. You are starting to realize at that time that your parents are flawed. That's a big thing. You're starting to realize that the truths you believed in or accepted as a child are not immutable, and in fact are often flimsy as all hell.
You go very quickly from realizing your parents are not only not immortal, but potentially kind of frail,
and powerfully imperfect, right? That's the other thing that you deal with.
Oh my god, yeah.
You deal with that, and it's a hard thing. That takes a long time to deal with, and also that's when you start to realize that the way your parents treated you may not have always been the best, right?
All of that. It all comes.
It all comes at that point, and you start to grow into who you are, into a new identity that's very difficult and very, like, your skin. Sometimes you feel like at that age your skin is twisted on you. It's too tight. It's too, you're writhing inside of yourself. On top of that, you've got the entire new politics of sex and different relations to other people, and so much happening. And into that you have all of the fucking poisons of our present day society pouring in.
And I think as well, and this is where that comment about the kid feeling he's ugly just really just kills me, because there's also that, and I think it is common to most, if not all, teenagers. There is a period of those years where you feel radically different on the inside to the way you look on the outside, and you look in the mirror and you're like, what the fuck is that?
What is that, right?
What is that? Because it ain't me,
Oh yeah.
Because I know what I feel like.
There are no photographs of me from between the ages of 12 to about 16, because I've made sure there fucking isn't.
Right. But like it is. It's a real thing where it's just like what, and also like there's a very particular. I mean, I think I've written about this before. Maybe in one of the My Life in Horrors I talked about it. But there's a thing about like there's a very particular thing about the British school system where. Between 11 and 16, if you're lucky, 11 and 18, if you're unlucky, you're with the same peer group, effectively, in the school, assuming that you stay in the same geographic location.
Of course.
You have that peer group, and they grow up with you and you grow up with them. But because you all met each other at 11, actually, functionally, most of you are frozen in amber at whoever you were in those first 2 weeks of being at school when you were 11.
Right.
And there comes a point where actually the reflection in the mirror no longer represents the kid that everyone at school still sees.
Right.
So you get it in reverse almost, where it's like, I mean, and for me, it's a minor thing in the grand scheme of things, but for me, it was the long hair. Like, I had a flat top when I went into school at 11. By the time I left school at 16 to go to sixth form college, I had hair down at my arse.
Funnily enough, I was kind of the same.
But I know that no one in the school saw me as one of the long hair guys. I was the flat top kid. In their minds I was afraid, and it wasn't, that's why I say if you're lucky it ends at 16, because then I got to sixth form college and I got to encounter a bunch of other 16-year-olds. I met them as 16-year-olds, not as 11-year-olds who'd become 16. They saw me fresh as a 16-year-old, not as an 11-year-old. They saw me for who I was at that point. I saw them for who they were, and suddenly, I mean, I still have friendships from that period that have lasted to this day. I'm very grateful for, but this kid, this poor sod, he's 13, so he's in the middle of it. And the other thing is, he doesn't think he's very bright.
Right.
And he's clearly very fucking bright.
He's clearly very intelligent. Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? So mixed into that, you have this incredible self-loathing and doubt.
Yeah.
The sense of the world coming apart, right?
Which is absolutely a core component of the teenage condition. And I don't know anyone that goes through adolescence without having moments of that. And I think the amount of it you go through and the depth and the length will vary wildly between people.
Absolutely. And the way you get out of it, right? The way you start to deal with it is very different. And the way it's so easy to say to people, classic, it gets better, right?
If you get out of it.
If you get out of it, that's the thing.
Yeah. Because how many, to bring it full circle, how many of the poisonous right-wing people that we're dealing with today are the way they are precisely because they never did get out of that?
This is exactly it, right? They're at an arrested stage of development.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's exactly it. That is exactly. Also, the other thing is, in psychological terms, it's a narcissistic phase. It's what's called a narcissistic phase. We all go through this, by the way, where we do believe we really actually biologically cannot think any other way, but that we are the center of the universe in a strange kind of way. And the bad things that happen, this is the other thing that happens, because we are that way. The bad things that happen in our families, it's because of us.
It's our fault.
It's because we've done something right. It's because we're flawed.
Yep.
It's the universe punishing us, because that's the way it happens. And it takes an awful more. It's not something that you transition out of naturally. It's something you learn if you're lucky enough to learn. If you're lucky enough to have the life experiences that make you learn. And if you don't, well, the possibility of you becoming a monster is actually very high. It's very possible.
Yeah. It's
very, very difficult. Again, there are so many variables as well.
Yeah.
Are you queer? Are you gay? Are you trans? Are you male, female, whatever? All of these things. What social class do you come from? What input are you having? That's the other thing, right? Yes, obviously.
Yep.
What input are you having? I mean, that is huge. That's huge. What is feeding your mind? And the notion that could be that at that formative stage when you are grappling for identity, when you are after anything, the notion that could be Andrew fucking Tate or any one of his contemporaries is horrifying.
Well, you know what? And this is one of those occasions where I can speak to this, unfortunately, from direct personal experience. You've read the Ghost essay, My Life in Horror, right?
Mm-hmm, certainly did.
So you know what I had going on with me in those formative years? One of the things I had going on with me, one of my inputs, was someone who was, amongst other things, deeply misogynistic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was couched very much in language that Tate would recognise about just the natural order of men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very much about how, the problem with feminism is that it makes women unhappy because it makes them want things that they shouldn't want.
Right.
It makes them reach for things that will not make them happy because actually they have a biological imperative to be mothers. And that is what, this is it. It's just the most basic bullshit in the world, right? But in this particular case, very cleverly from the perspective of who this person was trying to manipulate at the time, i.e. me, very cleverly dressed up in a kind of neo-pagan religious kind of, not religious, spiritual kind of, the true essence and nature and blah, 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 this whole thing about this is about getting back, this is about smashing society by getting back to the roots of what we're supposed to be and blah, blah, blah.
This is the danger of it, right? Because it can sound, unless you have wider context, unless you have wider information, it can sound so right. It can sound so logical,
Yeah,
it can sound so reasonable and rational.
And especially because, and again, just to make the point, these people lie like breathing.
Like you wouldn't believe. Yeah.
And they lie with complete sincerity. And maybe they believe the bullshit, maybe they don't, but they would deliver. I mean, because the other one that gets me is when the kid says, I don't believe in everything they say, but you know, they talk about the 80-20 thing where like 80% of women like 20% of men, and I do believe that. And it's like, it's what the thing about that that's so impressive to me is like impressive in an awful way.
Yeah.
The 80-20 rule is something that exists. It's an existing statistic, and this is why it rings familiar with people, because 80-20 is about like in any project, like 80% of the work takes 20% of the time, and covering that last 20% takes 80% of the time. It's always getting things from, it's the idea is it's about getting things from good to excellent or excellent to perfect. Takes far, far more effort than just getting to good.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's true of any kind of area of human endeavor. You and I both probably got our 10,000 hours in writing, for example, and we are hopefully better writers than we were, you know, when we started that process. But,
bloody hope so. Better than a 15-year-old. I should fucking hope so.
Right. So I've got my million words in, and I'm definitely a better writer now than I was. But I know if I want to become as good again as I am now from where I was, it's not going to take another million. It's going to take another 10 million.
Yep.
Because it's harder. It gets harder to improve the closer you get. And that's what the 80-20 rule actually is. It exists. It's a thing. And, you know, I still don't know if it's statistically accurate, but it's an expression of a real phenomenon, right? It's a useful way of thinking about something.
Yeah.
So that exists in the world. And what these fuckers do is just take it, rip it out of context, rip it out of the original meaning, and dump it somewhere where it doesn't belong, where there's no statistical evidence for it. There is no. I mean, what study would you even fucking do?
What are you even talking about?
That would ascertain evidence that would enable you to make that as any kind of truth claim that wouldn't get laughed out of any fucking.
Right. It's nonsense. It's nonsense in and of itself. I mean, what are you even talking about? What culture, for one thing? What culture are you talking about? What part of that culture? What strata? What do you even mean? How have you defined the data? How have you analyzed it? How have you come to your conclusions?
I mean, how are you defining woman? How are you defining man?
How are you defining light?
Right.
You know? Because, I mean, this is an interesting thing. I mean, like, you know, I know a lot of people, and it's common enough that I find it to be quite true a lot of the time. I know a lot of people in relationships who fucking hate their significant others.
Yep.
You know? It's like, what does like have to do with it?
Right.
What does like have to do with it? But it's also it's the assumptions within the framing and the language as well, right?
Of course,
which is
it's
this
about
dehumanizing notion that women only exist to be God. That's what they are, right? It's funny enough, it's the same thing that you get in evangelical Christianity, right? And why it doesn't work, why it's so insincere. Because anyone of any sort of perspective will see that there is a dehumanizing element innate. You just want a get for God. And it's for you, right? It's to make you feel good. Yeah. This is the same. Women exist as a kind of commodity or as a kind of object to be gotten. Yeah.
And that's one of the things that's so chilling about that third episode when she's interrogating him and you realize, and like, because she asks him, like, what do you want a girlfriend? And he's like, well, he doesn't. What would you do with her?
Yeah.
I'd take her to a movie. What kind of movie? Horror. Would you take her home? What would you try and do? And I mean, there's also the moment where you realize you're hearing someone on camera in a show, I mean, in any context, talking about teenagers teenagers who are not the age of majority, who are not 16, and sexual activity, and realizing, I don't even remember the last time I heard a conversation about this. And that's interesting in and of itself. Like, a conversation as opposed to fucking rabid hysteria.
Yes, complete and utter rabid hysteria.
Like, the kind of thing that was parodied so brilliantly by Chris Morris in the Brass Eye special, and which has become only more relevant rather than less since, like actual adult conversation about this. Well, okay, let's file that away as a kind of been a million years since that's happened.
It's an amazingly parental way of looking at these phenomena, isn't it? The notion that we don't like to think that our young people, our children, are engaging in sexual activity. Well, tough titty.
You know what? It's so fucking ridiculous too. It's like, because it's like, so what? You don't remember being 13?
Right. This is the other thing, right? Not only 13, by the way, but like any psychologist or any sociologist that's done their research knows that what is considered to be sort of like the beginnings of sexual experimentation begin much earlier.
Yeah,
like much earlier.
And it's like, this is not to say that we should not protect children from predators. We absolutely should. In fact, it makes it more important, not less, when you understand that.
It makes it more important that we understand that, and
knowing
we provide
more things makes us more. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly, and that we don't react with fucking hysteria to it. That we provide the safe spaces and the education and for them to just do that, because that's what sets up sexual neuroticism and the problems that ultimately lead to real atrocity.
Yeah.
It's when we as adults fucking interfere too much and just make it,
And where we as parents as well, and I have to say it, where we as parents aren't prepared to have that door be open for our kids to walk through, or not, according to what they want to do, but they have to know that they can have those conversations.
Also, I mean, parents really don't want to hear this. It's not up to you. It's not up to you.
No, that's right. That's right. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? That's where something you said at the beginning, like, if you have a kid, if you make the decision to have a kid, you've made the decision potentially to have a queer kid, a disabled kid, a kid with any kind of physical or mental disability, a difficult kid, an awkward kid, a kid who is utterly unlike you in every single sense, a kid that likes football. You don't fucking know. You do not know what you're signing up for, but you're signing up for any of that. And if you're not okay with that, maybe don't fucking do it.
Well, just don't do it. Yeah, that's the bottom line. Just don't do it, because it's
I mean, I don't know how many of our problems would be solved if we could somehow find a way of waving a magic wand and getting people to understand that. But it would solve a lot, because so much. I know you did a recent show with Jack about this and about But it's the same disease,
it was a
right?
Bit of a rabbit hole that was. I can tell you.
But it is that, right? It's that thing of like the fundamental and I see it again. It's endemic on the right. Like, well, my kid would never be queer.
My kid would never be this. My kid would,
because I'm going to raise them right.
Right, they exist as extensions of me.
Well, because I bought into the propaganda that these things that I don't like are things that people are choosing to do and have learned to do, rather than things that they just are.
But also, children don't exist as real people on the right.
Well, yeah.
They're not real people.
No, like women, they're commodities. Right. Yeah,
they're commodities, and they are expressions of the creator, of the individual, of the authority. Right, that's what they exist as. And if they step outside those bounds, then they're malfunctioning and they're evil and they're wrong. Right.
Yep. Absolutely.
That's the God's honest truth. That's how they see things. That's how they see things. Yeah. And they make it very overt. It's amazing. I mean, and it does alter. I mean, I love the fact that this show is actually, it's allowing space for us to have these conversations culturally now.
Absolutely.
And it's facilitating them. I mean, again, one of the reasons the right don't like it.
Yeah.
They don't want it.
No,
they oh my God, they don't want kids to be having these conversations.
No.
Jesus Christ.
And I mean, to bring it full circle as well, like, we watched this with Kiddo, because we watched it by ourselves first, and we were like, she needs to see this. Yeah. And we need to sit and watch it with her, and we need her to know, in the same way that I made sure I sat and watched Black Klansman with her, there are films, there are works of art, and there are conversations that it's not even that you need to have the conversation. You need to open the door for the conversation to happen, because again, it's not up to you. It's up to your kid. Your kid will decide whether or not they want to talk to you about it, and that's fine. And they have the right to privacy.
Yes.
And if you don't understand that, you're a fucking shit parent.
You're a shit parent, right? And
kids have the right to privacy. They have the right to an internal life.
Doing that video with Jack and doing the research for it, you would be surprised the amount of parents who don't believe that.
No, I would not. I've seen it.
Wow.
I've seen it. And my missus works in child protective services.
She's seen it. Yeah. It's a great recipe for your child reaching the age of 18 maybe, and just never talking to you again.
Yeah.
Keeping you at arm's length.
Yeah. And if that happens, you fucking deserved it too.
You deserve it. You deserve it. I mean, oh my God. Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like, the worth of the parents is measured in the love of the child. That is absolutely true. And don't get me wrong. Are there circumstances where there are children who are, who are problematic in and of themselves, who are warped by external circumstances? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it is phenomenally fucking rare for there not to be some. There is always some kind of parental issue.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
always.
I think, and yeah, and again, to bring it back to the show, I think what is so brilliant about the show is the way the show does not in any way shy away from that.
No, it doesn't.
But
It
it
doesn't.
does it, and it does it in such a way that neither exonerates nor excoriates the parents.
No, it's really subtle. Actually, it doesn't villainize. It doesn't make them the bad guys. What it actually exposes is the problems inherent to what people would consider to be normal families and normal parenthood.
Yeah,
That's what it does. And it's. I mean, that's a really. I mean, like, wow.
And,
that's
it does do
incendiary.
that.
That is.
But and let's not forget also the wider social forces that create those environments and that enforce them. Because that's the thing. Again, it's so powerful, that thing about like, yeah, he's always tired, he's always working. Yeah, he is. Because with his class background and where he came from, the only way out, the only way for you to have a half decent life where you could have that computer in your room and a separate room from your sister and food in your belly every day and clothes in your back was to work every fucking hour he had. And that meant he couldn't be there, and that meant he wasn't there when you actually fucking needed him. Yeah.
And he's enjoying to do that, of course, and by his culture, right? By his conditioning. That's what he exists
his choice was to do that or live in absolute poverty in order to physically be there when you needed him. And
also, by the way, to fail as a man by these standards.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
absolutely.
That's the choice.
Yeah.
And it's really, I mean, the lesson, the significance of that is so phenomenally dark. The notion that you can do exactly what you believe you were supposed to do, what you were enjoined to do. You can do the right thing, and it's still the wrong thing.
It's interesting you say that, because I agree with you, but I also think that's also the enormous power of the piece. And if that's where the piece has a potential for redemption, not in the drama itself. The fate of everyone in there is sealed, but in the impact it can have in the real world. Because like you say, if this becomes a catalyst for conversation, especially between fathers and sons, yes, it has the potential to do an enormous amount of good.
Yeah, doesn't it? Just
or mitigate an enormous amount of harm, or however you want to call it.
I believe so. I believe so. I would certainly like teenage boys in particular to be watching this. I really, really would.
We started by, one of the things we talked about early on in this conversation was the degree to which we despise Keir Starmer, and I stand by everything I've said about him.
Me too.
He does want this shown in schools, and
fair enough.
He is right about that.
He is right about that.
That is something that should happen. I mean, he won't do it because the Daily Mail will shit the bed, and he'll find a reason not to. And he's never going. Yeah, he's never going to engage in the actions, like the real measurable actions, to diminish the circumstances in which these things occur. He's never going to do that. But that impulse in him was correct.
Yes,
and that is.
Absolutely,
and I hope that people of actual moral courage take it forward, even when he doesn't, because he won't, because he doesn't have any.
Likewise.
And I hope a lot of parents sit down and watch it with their kids.
Yeah,
as I did, and I hope they get a lot out of it, as I did.
Definitely. And if you happen to be like in my particular sphere, where you're sort of queer and not really like connected to sort of family structures per se, then it gives you some insight into what exactly is wrong with the straights at the moment.
Oh yeah. No, if that is a question that is periodically rattling around in your brain, this is a very potent text.
Oh, when I say we're asking, I mean it's like a thing in queer culture. It is. It's a thing. It's something that people are asking themselves and asking one another. What is wrong with them? What is going on? Why are they so crazy? Why are they so insane? Why are they so extreme and odd and unhappy all the time?
Yep. Well, some of the answers are here.
They are indeed.
Some of them are here.
Well, Kit, thank you. I mean, always. It's always. It's
it's been a little while too. So
it's been a busy one, hasn't it? It's been and this fucking year, as we discussed, a little while back, this fucking year, it's just like
it's that meme, isn't it? Like, good Christ, what a fucking year this has been. It's April.
Yeah, it's only April. Bloody Nora. Yeah, doesn't feel like it, does it?
No, it doesn't. It feels like 2028 at this point for me.
At this point, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anywho, before we go, is there anything you'd like to pimp out there?
I mean, I've been in the Midnight Society. I feel like I've probably peaked
I
anyway.
will link to that, by the way, guys.
'Cause,
Kit got shouted at and excoriated by the Midnight Society version of Clive Barker.
I mean, it gives me something to shoot for. Like, can I beat that as a career high? I doubt it, but I'll try. That gives me something to shoot for.
As an aside, did you see his last public thing that he did?
No, I heard
Clive,
about
he
it.
did. Yeah, really cool, really interesting, but very sad. It's like, yeah.
No, I get it. I mean, all I'll say about that is, I mean, anything like that is inevitably bittersweet. I think, as someone who, obviously with what I went through with my dad a couple of years ago, what I will say is that I think, do not ignore the gift. As bittersweet as it is an absolute gift for him to be able to make that decision of saying, it's a level of agency it gives him to say, this is going to be my last thing.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, he brought it down to very practical terms. I mean, he said, ultimately, I've been phenomenally ill and I don't have energy anymore to be doing everything anymore. I've got to make a decision. I've got to do one thing or the other. And he said, I prefer to spend my last years writing and painting and whatnot. So that's what I'm going to do.
And if you have any love for the man at all, that's what we want him to do too, right?
Oh my God, yes.
Like,
absolutely. More, please.
I don't have any time for anyone who says otherwise. Like, the man's a fucking artist. Let him be an artist.
Let him do it. My God. I mean, nobody does it better, do they?
Do you know what I mean? Like, seriously, fucking hell.
Let him bloody do it.
We're getting to breathe the same air for however many years we're getting to do it. Let him fucking do his thing.
Well, don't get me wrong. I would have loved to have met him at a convention or something. Same. I would have loved to, but I'd rather have his books.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yep. No, 100%. So, as for me, I mean, well, if you want to find my fiction work, go to Amazon, search under books, Kit Power. You'll find all of my fiction work there. My latest is Millionaire's Day, a novella about everyone in the United Kingdom waking up to find that they've got £1 million in a suitcase under their bed, which you would think would be a good thing, but turns out not so much. Or certainly not for the first morning of the event, which is what the novella is concerned with. So check that one out. I say that just because it's my latest, and I'm always proudest of my latest because it's got, I think it's a good representation of the kind of work I do. You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll hurl. I mean, it's got all of that good stuff in it. Queer characters, child murder, all the good stuff. And check out my other work through Amazon, amazon.com, Kit Power, and then just look under books. If you want to buy the physical paperbacks, most of them have ISBN numbers, so order them from your bookshops rather than Bezos if you can, or indeed your local library. That would be incredible. I love seeing my books in the library. If you want my non-fiction work, I am still writing the odd review for Ginger Nuts of Horror, so you can find me over there. But the easiest way to keep track of everything I'm doing is going to patreon.com/Kit Power. On there, if you sign up for free, you'll get access to my somewhere between monthly and quarterly newsletter where I'll let you know what I'm doing, and that's free to sign up for. Or for just a single $1 a month, you will get something new from me every single week. There's something new, might be a review, it might be a non-fiction essay in my Brian Keane series, it might be a podcast such as this, which you might get early access to, or it might be excerpts from my screenplay for the Finite, which I'm currently serializing over there. So a good variety of material you'll get, and again, it's just a single $1 a month gets you something new every week. That's the best way to keep up with what I'm doing.
Fabulous. Links to all of that down below, by the way, including Kit getting shouted at by the Midnight Society, Clive Barker. As for myself, guys, again, find me here on Exaggerated Elegy. I am doing a bit more now. I know I had a little bit of a hiatus. Again, it's been this year. I haven't had the energy, quite frankly. I just, stuff needed to give, and that's just what gave, I'm afraid. But we're picking up again now. We're going to be lots more episodes of this. What the hell is wrong with us? There's going to be Not the Same Log returning. Hannibal Digested is going to be returning. Now that myself and my podcasting compatriots are recovering a little bit, and are getting back on track. As for my
Seasons of the
published
Crow
work,
is coming back as well.
Seasons of the Crow is returning.
I
It is.
swear to you that will happen.
Yes, it's coming. It absolutely is. I'm very proud of the intro I made for that, so it's got to come back, I'm afraid. It's got to come back because I was really goddamn pleased with that.
Yeah, that's good.
As for my fiction, you can find all of my published work at strangeplaygrounds.com. I'm going to be doing more with that very soon as well, by the way, guys, so keep an eye on that. You can, if you like Kit, if you go to Amazon, type in George Daniel Lee, you will find my Amazon author page, which has all of my short story collections and also all the various anthologies and things that have been published. And again, as per usual, if you go to Arrow Films, you will find the Hellraiser set, the Quartet of Torment, the Blu-ray and UHD set, and Kit and I are on that.
We're still on
the
it. They haven't taken this off or anything. It's amazing.
No, we're on the Hellbound disc. We're on the Hellbound disc, and we had a really good old chat on there with our own featurette and everything. Really, really cool. I'm also, there are loads of articles in the wings. I've got like a backlog of articles for My Life in Horror over at Ginger Nuts of Horror. There's so much that I've got to submit. I've got to give to Jim. I had a bit of a shudder with it for some reason. I was like, I was sort of like, this isn't working. I'm not doing it correctly. And then I went back and looked over the stuff I'd written. I was like, oh no, actually, this is pretty good. So there's an article on Hellraiser and the Hellbound Heart. There's an article on At the Mountains of Badness by Lovecraft. There's an article on Robert Eggers' Nosferatu. There's going to be an article on Adolescence and on a wider discussion about identity and masculinity and so on and so forth. And lots of stuff from this show will probably come up in it. And there's a couple of others as well. So keep an eye out for those. There's going to be quite a slew of those very soon. And I think that's it for me too. Kit, thank you once again. It's been great catching up as always.
Same. Huge pleasure as always. Yeah, good to talk.
Brilliant. Okay, guys. Until next time. Bye.
Bye for now.